All right. Good morning, everyone. Good midday, midweek. Welcome to Reality Check. It is Reality Check, your daily dose of politics, public policy, public affairs here on WURD, the home of Black Talk Media, here on 96.1 FM, 900 AM, wordradio.com, Word TV, Word app. Good morning to you all. Good morning to Philly and beyond. I'm Charles Ellison, your host, executive producer, and also creator of Reality Check here on WURD. I'm at Ellison Report on Twitter.com. Catch me if you can. And welcome to the program. Happy Wednesday to you all. Happy midweek, midday. Frigid, chilly midweek, midday. And hope everyone is looking forward to or has something to look forward to as we're already halfway to the weekend. Welcome to the program. Welcome to the show. Good to see you all. Good to see you all on Word TV as well. Once again, you can catch me at Ellison Report on Twitter.com. Many of you also watching us on Word TV at YouTube.com/onWURD and Facebook.com/4word as well. We're just going to get started here, open up the phone lines. We may have the full hour to ourselves here in the 10 o'clock hour. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. Have a busy afternoon or busy midday ahead of us. Once we get into the 11 o'clock hour, made some scheduling adjustments, and so we have the 10 o'clock hour, I believe, with open phone lines at 215-634-8065. Toll free, it is 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065. Toll free, it is 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Something I haven't done for several days now, and it's just on a more regular and daily basis, just reminding people, particularly in Philadelphia, that they are still faced with a violent crime crisis. We still have a violent crime crisis in Philadelphia. There have been 435 homicides in Philadelphia to date, 435 officially. That's the official tally. I'm sure there's more than that. Unfortunately, tragically, that I have to say that, but I'm sure there's more than 435 once we get the official tally tomorrow. But just according to the Philadelphia Police Department, 435 homicides so far in the city of Philadelphia. The homicide rate is 39% above where it was this time last year. It has not been below 20% at all in 2020. Never been below at 20% above the rate of homicides at that same time in the previous year. So we have not seen 400 plus homicides for a long time in Philadelphia. We have not seen 400 plus homicides in Philadelphia at all in the 21st century. This is the first time in the 21st century that we've seen 400 homicides in a year in Philadelphia. So let that settle in, let that sit in. 400 homicides in a year in the 21st century. So, all Philadelphia not just breaking records in recent years, but Philadelphia also breaking century records as far as like this current century. And I do get the feeling that the city has just sort of shrugged and resigned itself to accepting that it has a high violence rate, and so it just is what it is, and everyone's just on their own. That's sort of the vibe that I'm getting. It may be the vibe that everyone else in Philadelphia who's living in Philadelphia and living through it is getting as well, and that nothing can be done. So just that's pretty sad and tragic. 215-634-8065. Toll free 866-361-0900. Would like to get your thoughts on that. Philadelphia not the only major city that's dealing with a high violent crime rate. Other major cities are dealing with that as well. Obviously, pandemic is not helping the situation. In fact, pandemic has aggravated the situation. In addition to the high poverty rates, the high food insecurity rates, the high the increase of economic meltdown that we're seeing all around us, and it promises to get worse as we head into the holidays. Crime does go up during the holidays, let's actually while we're while we're still kind of having that discussion about, what's happening locally, I do want to bring on our Vote Beat reporter, Sojourner Ahavi, who's been following what's been happening locally, politically, particularly in the wake of the 2020 elections. She's joining us now. I'm not sure if she's by phone or if we have her by Skype as well. Sojourner?
Hi, I'm by phone. How are you?
All right, good, good. All right, good to talk with you. So what have you been focused on lately? So now we're 2 weeks out from the 2020 election. It seems like some things have been resolved, correct, as far as we can tell, in the Pennsylvania State Supreme Court. And
Right.
also we have a final count from the Philadelphia City Commissioner's office as far as turnout is concerned, at least initial
Yes.
indications showing that turnout the highest has been since 1984. Is that what I'm hearing?
I'm actually seeing since 1960 as of today from the State Department.
Mm.
So pretty iconic results.
Wow, wow. So, how is right now? How are folks kind of responding to or reacting to? I wonder these, persistent, or at least, I mean, is there a sigh of relief as far as this latest Pennsylvania Supreme Court ruling? Talk a little bit about that, how that's worked out. I mean, obviously, Republicans, the Trump campaign, still trying to get a Hail Mary somewhere in federal courts, but. Is there a sigh of relief as far as you can tell from city and also state officials?
Yeah, in conversations with a lot of city officials and actually even a lot of lawyers that I've been in conversation with at the ACLU who were actually working on some of these cases personally, there was already a sense from them that they knew this wasn't actually going to go through and things were going to work out in their favor. So I think sort of the logistics of not having to do this anymore and putting energy, time, and money towards it, yes, that's a big relief. But they were already anticipating that these were not going to be taken seriously because obviously the claims were false.
That's interesting. We're talking with Sojourner Ahavi. She's our Vote Beat reporter here at WURD, looking at what's happening on the local and state political landscape. And feel free if you have questions too. I'm just going to open up the phone lines just in case people have questions. Sojourner,
For sure.
215-634-8065, 866-361-0900, 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. Sojourner, I just want to see if you're sort of getting a sense of how local and state elected officials, particularly local and state Democrats, how they're planning to now pivot or transition from all that energy. Obviously, people put in a lot of energy into the election, ensuring that people were turning out and they were getting the sort of results that they wanted, particularly with the presidential election for 2020. Now you got to transition back to focusing or putting all energy into issues like pandemic. The city's fiscal health is not so well. We've got a gun violence crisis in the city. There's issues with the schools. There's a surge in coronavirus cases. What's the thought or what's the mood as far as now, kind of feeling like, hey, we've got to pivot and very aggressively and very immediately back to these issues. Not like they weren't focused on those issues before, but I mean, let's just be real. There was a lot of energy that was being put into the election.
Right. I mean, I think they're both sort of interrelated, right? So as we were saying, voter turnout, reached an unprecedented rate in Pennsylvania. But when we actually look at the turnout rate on a city level, particularly for Black and Brown residents, that's actually not true. Turnout actually looks like it waned a little. And what's interesting about Philadelphia citywide, regardless of race, the Democratic margin of victory has actually lessened as well. So Republicans, the Republican vote got a little bit more than it did in the 2016 election. So when I was talking to Congressman Dwight Evans, who represents the 3rd District, he was actually telling me how that's actually really concerning for him. And so there's a lot of issues around voter turnout for Black and Brown communities that actually still is a problem. And we're seeing a lot less engagement, and that's, due to a lot of different things. That could be people weren't really excited about Biden. That could be the pandemic. Of course, it impacted Black and Brown communities disproportionately. A lot of people reported being scared to go out to vote in person and not trusting mail-in, so just deciding to disengage from the election altogether. And then, of course, all of the issues that you just named that's just, paramount to all of the additional things that the pandemic brought on. So, yeah, they're very interrelated, and I think a lot of our elected officials are tapping into that problem right now.
So, highest turnout that the city has seen in so many years, however, lower that the state has seen since the 60s. I think for Philadelphia, I think it was 1984, the highest turnout we've seen since 1984, right, for the city, but still lower levels of black and brown voter turnout.
Yeah, for sure.
Wow, wow. I did see that. I was saying this about a couple of years ago. I think Republican registrations have gone up slightly in Philadelphia in recent years. So, what do we attribute that to? Is that just because of the very dramatic demographic shifts that we're seeing as far as the city is concerned? Having newer residents, whiter residents moving into the city, and so maybe like the higher, because I know that Trump received more voters in Philly in 2020 than he did in 2016. So does that explain some of it as well? Like, just an increase in Republican voter registration in the city?
That's interesting. I haven't looked too much into that, but what I have seen is sort of comparative analysis of Hillary Clinton and Biden when we're looking at sort of what demographics they did well with. We saw, obviously, that Hillary didn't do well with a lot of working class white segments of the population in the city of Philadelphia who had previously voted for Obama. So there's demonstrated shifts in those communities for sure. And of course, we saw a little bit of shift even of black men voting for Trump this time around, who had voted for Obama in the previous two elections.
We saw that as well in Philly. Did we see a notable number of black men voting for Donald Trump in Philly?
I don't think it was Philly specific. I think these were statewide. These were exit polls I was looking at, so those were statewide numbers I was looking at. In terms of
what do those statewide numbers show us? Like as far as Pennsylvania, as far as like just kind of the breakdown, like white men, white women, black men, black women.
Yeah, so what's interesting is the overall black, support for Biden was being polled at around 92%. So 92% of black people essentially picked Biden, and that wasn't too different from 2016. But when you actually looked at it on a gender level, black women were a little bit less likely to vote for Biden than they voted for Clinton. So they were around, I think, like 94% for Biden this time around. But in 2016, it was like 99% for Clinton. And then the inverse was true of black men. They were more likely to vote for Biden than they had for Clinton.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. A lot of people not, and that state by state data is also interesting. The thing is, how do Democrats in the city reconcile that? Because a lot of it stems from the fact that people in the city, they feel very detached from the elected class. They feel they're very detached from policymakers on the local level, particularly those in City Hall. They feel like, the general mood, particularly within the black community in Philadelphia, is that there's still so much to be done. They don't feel like they're getting the kind of backing or support from elected officials from the city's democratic political machine that they desire, that they like. And so I think a lot of that explains why, you have, like, in addition to just that lower level, I know that Latino activists, brown activists throughout the city have been complaining that Democrats didn't wait till they waited until like 2 or 3 weeks before the election to start triggering aggressive voter mobilization efforts for them.
Right.
So how do they reconcile this? So because people have so many problems with what's happening on the local level in Philly, and then that bleeds over into voter mobilization for these really critical national elections, for even these statewide elections. Because they're looking at local Democrats as a reflection of all Democrats. That doesn't bode too well for Democrats heading into 2022, because they're going to need all the voter support that they can get for those congressional midterms, and also for those state legislative elections coming up as well in another couple of years.
Right, certainly. I think a lot of people, both voters, constituents, but even elected officials, have been saying that there was a lot of assumptions being made. I saw in the Philadelphia Inquirer they had actually covered that Latino turnout and a lot of like North Philadelphia Latino heavy wards was lower than it had ever been. And like you were saying, they waited too late. They had assumed that a certain segment of the population was just going to come out just because they were Democrats, and that wasn't true. They weren't excited, and they weren't really being shown what they were going to be offered by a Biden campaign and a Biden presidency. So it just goes to show that these segments of the population, the Black vote, the Latino vote, that have really been critical to the Democratic base, you still require. There's still a certain level of like appealing to those voters that you have to do. There's a real labor that goes into that it can't be assumed.
Yeah. Hey, another thing too, Sojourner. How much did the protests and a bit of the social unrest in Philly, just a week, less than 2 weeks ahead of the election, calls to defund the police, and more specifically the Philadelphia Police Department, how did that influence Trump voters, or how did that in any way, are we seeing signs that may have increased Trump's voter take in Philly a couple of weeks ago?
That's really interesting. That too, I haven't really looked into too well. I've only really focused on the inverse in terms of the movement organizing that happened all the way up until the election around sort of Black and brown communities, and that being a really inciting force to get people out to go vote, people that had really never voted even in their lives. I was talking to a young man you're going to hear from in my next story, who's 36 years old, and he said he really didn't even pay attention to presidential elections for most of his life until the Walter Wallace Jr. thing went down, and he was like, oh, I have to vote. So we definitely saw that as an inciting thing, but it'd be interesting to look at the other side.
Yeah. Let me take Woody out of Winfield, who's calling in for a reality check while we have a discussion with Sojourner. Woody?
Hey, man, this is great. I love your programming and how you do things, Charles, because you bring it right to the community. Ms. Sojourner, I just wanted to say to you, are you aware of these issue of illiteracy here in Philadelphia?
Well, that's a really good point.
And the reason I'm asking you that is because they changed the straight ticket when a lot of the people that were illiterate could go in and pull the straight ticket and walk out and still feel proud that they voted. However, they changed that, and that made it kind of hard for a lot of those people to vote this year. The other side of this is, when you think about it, why isn't there more emphasis on that? We keep talking around it, and I always tell people we have field Negroes and house Negroes. The field people can't, or out there in the field, they can't read the book. I mean, it was against the law for 400 years. Now you got the house Negroes, they get a chance to maybe get a book here or there. So I'm just saying the educated versus the uneducated, whether you're black or white, your ideology is of a white male supremacist in your educational situation. If you've been educated, your ideology is white male supremacist, whether you're male or female, so or black or white or Asian or Indian. My point is, I think there needs to be more emphasis on this. This illiteracy rate is so high, and we're down to 0% in our schools as it relates to reading.
Yeah.
I mean, just go online and check out the school district's information, the SPR report, the performance report. It'll tell you exactly what's going on. Just a couple of schools, over 0% reading proficiency, and nobody's talking about it.
No, nobody is talking about it. You're right, Woody.
Yeah, that's
It disgusts me. I'll just go ahead. I'll let you guys finish, but it kind of gets to me because we got books in the barbershop. We try to help adults as well as children to read. I write a lot of poetry. I'm one of those kids that went to the inner city school, so I already know. I had a teacher tell me in school when they said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I told the teacher after school. He said, "Well, guess what? You'll never be that in this school." Now, how do you tell a kid something like that? This is my first white teacher. And I realized then that something was wrong with it. And anytime a teacher would say that to a child, something's wrong.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. No, thanks so much, Woody. And there's a lot of variables there, right? Sojourner, maybe we can explore that a little further. You can investigate that a little further next time we talk, we can expound on it. But I mean the adult illiteracy rate in Philadelphia is over 25%. Over a quarter of Philadelphia adults functionally illiterate. That had to, I wonder if that played some role. The city commissioner's office, I'm not going to say they were dismissive of it, because I've asked that question of City Commissioner Lisa Dealey. It would be great to kind of see what you get out of it, when you talk to them about that illiteracy rate. I don't think she was, I just don't, it's not, I don't think, I'm pretty certain that they just did not account for that. So they haven't yet grasped the impact of that, changing the ballot like that, and the impact that that would have on functioning illiterate adults in Philadelphia. So there's that variable. In addition to lower black brown turnout, well, black brown populations in Philadelphia have been hit the hardest by pandemic, by coronavirus. So there are folks either afraid to go out, folks didn't want to go out, didn't want to participate for that reason, or just already tapped out because they're sick. Or people have unfortunately they're gravely ill, or they've transitioned, they passed away. People who would have normally voted in an election like this. So we shouldn't underestimate the impact of that either. So a lot of variables out there that we may not, we have to explore a little bit further and deeper, and we'll continue to talk about it. Sojourner Ahabi is Vote Beat reporter. I don't know if you had a last thought, Sojourner, before we head out.
Oh, no, not at all. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, no. Thanks for joining us. Always appreciate you. Sojourner Ahabi is Vote Beat reporter for WURD, following what's been happening during this election and looking at politics on the local and state beat here in Philadelphia and beyond. Sojourner Ahabi, go to @Sojourner Ahabi on Twitter for more there to see what she's up to and some of her reporting, and @onWURD and WURDradio.com as well. Sojourner, thanks so much for your time. So we'll talk to you next week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, take care. Okay, let's take a break, and we'll keep those phone lines open at 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900, 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Let's take a break, and we'll be right back.
Did you know millennials make up the largest share of the U.S. population? They are known for being tech-savvy, practicing mindfulness, and being socially and ethically conscious. But they are also on track to be in worse health than previous generations. Pitch your best ideas, Philly. You have the power to help shape how we address millennial health and mental health challenges in our beloved city. We'll connect you with our mentors and get you ready for a pitch competition with our judges. Visit economyleague.org/wellcity.
Jefferson Health offers no-cost COVID-19 testing at St. Raymond of Pinafort Church. Testing is on Thursdays and Saturdays. For testing hours and more information, visit jeffersonhealth.org/community testing.
Always Best Care is a great place to work. Flexibility,
leadership, purpose,
great benefits.
There's never a dull moment.
Diversity,
inclusion, compasión.
We love our jobs. If you're looking for a great place to work, you can join our compassionate Team Green. You can apply online at teamgreenabc.com or call 267-909-9248.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
WURD Radio presents the following wellness tip to support our listeners with mindfulness and motivation as we continue to navigate the pandemic together.
Hi, this is Helana, your resident health and wellness coach, with tips to help you stay well. Many of us have heard this term before, but may not know what it really means. Compassionate living brings mindfulness and peace to the center of your daily life. Compassionate living can look like this. Number 1, be gentle with yourself and those around you. Number 2, choose to speak kindly to others, even when you're upset. Number 3, become a good listener and practice empathy at home and at work. We sometimes think in order to live with compassion, we have to become someone else. Not so. In fact, allowing peacefulness to be at the center of our daily interactions is something we can practice every day. Go ahead and try it today. Stay well with WURD. Happy living.
Stay well with WURD. Connect with us at WURDradio.com.
With Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, wordradio.com, Word TV, Word app, 215-634-8065, toll free, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check, 215-634-8065, toll free, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Phone lines are open. AC out of West Philly is calling in for Reality Check. AC?
Hey, how you doing, Brother Charles? It's always good to hear Brother Woody, and I hear those comments all the time. But have you ever seen the report or know what actual schools, because we're talking in general, so it's kind of hard for people to help if we never hear or get the website for the report just for the Philadelphia school district, because if you go to the state one, it's very massive. So have you ever had information on the website for the specific schools so people can try to help those locations?
Yeah, I have. You know, when I've talked about it in the past, when I've raised issues with, and I've done this on a few occasions. I've reached out. You know, once again, I'm going to say this out loud. Going to say this publicly. We have invited the superintendent of the Philadelphia School District, Mr. Height or Dr. Height, to come on this program to talk about these very alarming academic performance numbers. We've talked about this on this program before. People can go to philasd.org to look at the school performance data and also performance data for reading and math proficiency. It is abysmal. And this was before the pandemic. This is before the pandemic stuff happened. That people in Philadelphia are okay or are not raising hell about the high rate of illiteracy in the city of Philadelphia. Well, one, it's heartbreaking, and two, it is infuriating. And I'm not just angry at the Philadelphia School District. I'm not just angry at people in City Hall. I am angry at every resident in Philadelphia. It boggles my mind that parents, you don't even have to be a parent. You should be concerned if you live in the city of Philadelphia and you have this many young people who cannot read at proficient or grade level. You should be concerned and alarmed. You should not be wondering why there's such high violence rates in the city when you have this many people in the city of Philadelphia. We're talking about the 5th largest city in the country, a city of 1.6 million people. And there's a whole bunch of folks in it, particularly young people, young black people who can't read, cannot read. That should alarm you. That should scare you. And you should be, I mean, folks are running down to the convention center about a week or two ago to celebrate Biden getting elected. You need to be like massing up at the thousands in front of the Philadelphia School District office, asking them like, yo, what the hell? What's up with this literacy rate or this illiteracy rate? And why are so many kids in the Philadelphia School District unable to read? I'm sorry, AC, go ahead. I'm furious about that. I'm furious about that. And the superintendent refuses to come on this program and have a conversation about it. Just won't do it. His staff won't let him do it. He won't do it. They're just scared. They don't want to have a conversation. It's time for him to go. Bring someone else in who actually is concerned about this many people not being able to read. I'm sorry, go ahead, AC.
We're letting off the hook. He's a very nice brother, and he came on.
He can't be a nice brother. I don't want to hear about nice brothers, nice sisters, people who are letting kids not being able to read. To me, that's evil. Like, why would you not make a big deal out of so many people being unable to read? Oh, go ahead.
Brother Charles, I wasn't talking about him. I was talking about the brother who came on, might seem like a nice guy, Hackney. He's responsible for this too, and he may be a nice brother in a nice suit, but he came on and strictly and I watched him. I listened to him very clearly and just talked about getting more members on the school board. That's my least concern. I'm worried about people being educated, and he's supposed to be the chief academic officer for the school district for the city of Philadelphia. He has some skin in this game too. And my point is, we let too many people get away, and the only person I hear consistently talking about this is Brother Woody. This is where it all starts with this crime, and we have to do something about it. And we have to get active. Like you said, we have to not be so reactive. We have to start marching down to the school building, practicing social distancing, and we have to do that. We just can't let this keep happening. We cannot. Yeah. That's why I say that the election's over. I called in way back in October of last year and said, I'll be glad when it's over. Now it's just about over. And 99 is just important as 45 in this city. And we need to start talking more about 99. And 99 is Jim Kenney. He's the 99th mayor of this city. And we need to call his name out every day on every station because he's responsible for the violence, the high poverty rate, and everything, and the lack of education. And we need to start calling his name, say his name. And I appreciate your time, brother, because this is really upsetting about how this city is going.
Yeah, it is. No, thank you, AC. It's just infuriating. People won't make noise about it. The only person that makes noise about it is Woody. No one else calls in. And, well, now AC. No one else really calls in. No one's infuriated about it. No one sees this as a problem. It's just like business as usual. And that's just not right. Like, that's not right, Philadelphia. You shouldn't. That is unacceptable. That's unacceptable. And it's it's evil. It's like evil to allow or to permit a city to not address its illiteracy crisis. It's just pure evil to you know what? Folks in Philly are no different than white slave masters back in the 19th century or before. You're no different. Because this is why my grandmother taught me how to read at such a young age, because she was like the main driving force behind her teaching me how to read at such a young age. She was like, you know what? Because she grew up in Virginia, she grew up in segregated Virginia, direct descendant of enslaved folks who slaved away on the fields in Virginia. And she was like, and I remember how my mother and my father and my grandparents and then before them told us how it was illegal for them to read. It was illegal for them to read. It was against the law. You get whipped, you get killed if they find out that you read. And here in Philadelphia, y'all are doing the exact same thing when you are not permitting these young people to read at the levels that they need to read. You are barring them from a life of success. You are barring them from a life of success when you don't make noise about this. I'm being like very serious about this. Doing the exact same thing. Everyone wants to talk about white supremacy and white nationalism and the impact that it's had. Like, we're okay. Not making noise about this issue, about the high rates of illiteracy in the city, is the exact same thing. It's white supremacy, because it's having the most detrimental impact on Black children in the city of Philadelphia and Black adults, and it's leading to all these other stressors and all these other issues and problems that we have. Because people can't read. There's a high rate of Black people in the city of Philadelphia can't read. And since everyone's cool with it or is not making noise about it, you all are pretty much acting like you're like the white slave masters who barred us from reading a couple of hundred years ago. The exact same thing when it was illegal for us to read. And a lot of us had to sneak around and read passages from the Bible to finally learn how to read. Or maybe you find some saddened white plantation owner that felt a little bit empathetic and is like, okay, well, I'm going to teach you your letters. It's the exact same thing. It's the exact same thing unfolding in Philadelphia. To hold that many Black children and that many Black adults and especially Black men back from reading. Y'all are doing the exact same thing and not making noise about it. I'm sorry. It's the exact same thing. It's the exact same thing. In 2020, y'all are in Philadelphia in 2020 acting like it's 1820, doing the exact same thing that they were doing back in 1820 and not doing a damn thing about it. And it's infuriating. It is. And it's infuriating that Woody is the only one that calls in consistently about it and says anything about it. Anyway, let's go back to the phone lines. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. Let me go to Viola out of Delaware, who's calling in for a reality check. Viola?
Good morning, Charles.
Good morning. All right, good morning.
I tell you, me as a grandparent came to Inland Elementary over 6 years ago, and Mr. Zook made sure that Inland Elementary's first floor, which is the cafeteria and some classrooms, got painted. There was a principal there, Dr. Nancy Wilson. The school was in deplorable condition, and me as a grandparent, I complained about it. But I also told my daughter and her husband that they were at fault also. I mean, my daughter has since moved to Delaware, and there I am in class with her daughter, and I was one that didn't go to the office. I would go straight to the classroom because I wasn't there to cause any problems and I wasn't violent, but I knew how to get into the school. My children came from out of the public school system. I graduated from Olney High. I believe the same draperies that were in Olney High in 1966 when I graduated are still hanging in that school. It's deplorable, and I blame the parents. The school board is one thing, but the parents are not griping loud enough to make some changes. I'm here in Delaware. These schools are excellent down here. I moved here because my younger daughter was having some personal problems, and my husband and I decided we needed to do something for ourselves. We moved to here. My daughter graduated from Sussex Central. My son, 26 years old, he graduated from Sussex Central. My daughter's two oldest children, one is in the Navy and one has graduated from Middletown High. She stood up and said, thankful for being able to, for her mom and dad to move her to Delaware, that she was able to finish school. They were at Roosevelt. I was horrified when they were in the public school system. But I am so happy that my daughter made a choice and moved to Delaware. It's more so the parents that cared about their children moved to the suburbs and put their children in private schools. The parents that couldn't afford that, they stayed within the city. But a large number of them, millennials, they don't really care about doing anything except sending their children to school every day. Somebody go and visit Thurgood Marshall, where I have a fifth grader at. And I'm not sure exactly what he's doing in school, but I'm concerned about him. Let alone reading, they don't even have a signature. They don't learn cursive anymore. So who should be teaching their children cursive? The parents at home while they're home, not in public, not in physical school. It's horrible. I'm a graduate of Olney, and I hear you, and I hear Woody. I had a man come to the voting poll here in Delaware, and he said, Miss, I want to vote. He said, but I'm going to need some help. He said, because I don't read well. I went into that booth with that man and helped him make his choice. So how many other men or women that are in the same category? You know, I hear you. And I just had to call because I'm a parent that has been concerned even when I'm in Delaware. I'm concerned about what's going on in Philadelphia.
It's terrible. It's terrible. And you should be concerned, like, because that's right across the bridge. And, you know, particularly if, you know, Philadelphia is your home base. But, you know, 36%, 36%, I mean, based on the data that the school district is, you know, and they're highlighting this, the dashboard, the performance data dashboard is a bit more clear on the Philadelphia School District's website these days. But according to recent performance evaluation tests, this is the standardized English language arts exam, just 36% of third graders in the city of Philadelphia are reading proficient, are English language proficient. 50% of K through second grade students are 50%, or are reading on grade level, are at 50% grade level, which is still, like, that's just half. That's still troubling. That's alarming. 50%, like, really? So that's, you know, folks should be, this is at the core of what's wrong, of what's eating away at the city, or what's causing all these other issues. Let me take a break, and then when I come back, I think we have Sister Murray from Northern Liberties. Hold on one second. Let me take a break. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. Let's take a break, and we'll be right back.
Just one more step. You got it.
You're doing great. This is the sound of a nationally ranked top rehabilitation hospital. home to the largest collection of robotics in the United States, where we continually exceed patient expectations, because no injury is too severe or too minor for our care.
There you go.
This is the sound of success. Moss Rehab. Challenge accepted.
As a business owner, hiring and developing people from the community that your company serves is one of the best ways to show commitment to that community. Let WURD Radio help with Livelihood, our new initiative that connects Philadelphians with companies like yours. We'll feature your business, open employment opportunities, and resources to connect your company with talent and ensure that you reach your target demographic. To learn more about how Livelihood can help you build your team, visit wordworks.com. That's WURD works.com. Livelihood is supported by the Nightland Fest's Local News Transformation Fund, Borealis Philanthropies Racial Equity and Journalism Fund, and the Solutions Journalism Network.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "Intelligence plus character. That is the goal of true education." For all young people to succeed in Philadelphia public schools, they need adequate resources and materials. But not all students have the same access and opportunities they deserve. As Philadelphia public schools continue to operate with remote learning, we at WURD Radio want to do our part to help students have the resources they need to be successful. Please join us and our community partners, Global Citizen and the Cayuga Elementary School, by donating supplies online so students have the same supplies we would want for our own children. Go to globalcitizen365.org to make an online contribution of supplies.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
Okay, welcome back. Let me go to the phone lines. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. Let me go to Sister Murray out of Northern Liberties calling in for a reality check.
Hi, Charles. How are you?
Sister Murray, how are you doing? Good morning.
I am hanging in there, Charles. We're dealing with a lot, but we're going to get through this.
All right. Thank you. Go ahead. Can you hear us, Sister Murray? Oh, we couldn't hear you for a minute. What were you saying?
I said my husband and I really appreciate you and WRD members. Charles, this is a very good show that you have on, like all the rest of them as always. But this is a great topic, and it's something that we don't need to let down so easily because we do have a lot of children who cannot read. I want to share a story with you, and this is very true, and it's real, and it breaks your heart. My husband and I was at a gas station, and we were getting gas, minding our own business. A young kid came over and approached my husband as he was about to pump his gas and said, "Sir, can I pump your gas for you?" My husband said to the young guy, looked to be no more than about 10 years old, he said, "Sure, you can pump my gas, but if you can only do one thing for me, read this book." The young guy turned around to my husband and literally cussed him out. You know why? He could not read. Which is so sad. It broke my heart. He couldn't read. So his way of acting out was to be violent. And that's exactly what's going on. And the young lady who was just on the radio, she's absolutely right. The parents are at fault if your child cannot read. They drop their kids off at school, and they just want to go and do them. And if they don't start putting into their kids, then you won't get anything out of them. You will find them in prison, and you will find them in a whole lot of trouble and on drugs out in the street. So we must. And Woody does have a very passionate heart about children. And I don't know if you remember a while back, I had spoken to you about, because of his compassion about children that he talked about all the time in the barbershop, that I was going to have some books delivered to him. A book that I have wrote, a children's career book called Picture Yourself, and it's to make the kids imagine themselves being a doctor, lawyer, judge, a teacher, a preacher, whatever they want to be. And so I had those books delivered to Woody's barbershop, and I asked him, give it to a child. I paid for them. I want you to give a book to a child. We can, as parents, we can go out here and buy many things, all these expensive sneakers, buy a book, sit down and read to your child. Have your child read. This is the best time, if ever, to sit down every day and read to your child. I have a 5-year-old granddaughter, and I have her read every single day. She must read a book. And she reads very well. But I'm putting time in. The parent must put time into your kids. It's like an investment. It's like when you buy a house. It's like when you buy a car is not an investment. But education is an investment, private school. Go down there to that school. You know, they stripped our schools, Charles. We don't have gym in our schools. We don't have home ec in our schools. We don't have shop. You wonder why these kids are so violent. Well, you stripped everything. They can't play instruments. What do they have, Charles?
Yeah.
They have a decent playground. I'm going to let you go after this, Charles. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep helping us get through this. We're going to reach these parents. They got to change. If this doesn't make them change, then guess what, Charles? We're in a lost world, society. What do our children, our grandchildren, have to look forward to if they cannot get a decent education?
That's right. That's right. It's right here. Recent studies have shown that 85% of young people, of juveniles who interact with the court system, are functionally illiterate. 85%. So if you want to keep your young people out of jail, if you want to keep them out of the criminal justice system, or that so-called school to prison pipeline, make sure they read. And you know what? And I appreciate Sister Murray saying this, and someone else commented on this on Facebook Live. Ultimately, it's the parent's responsibility. You know if your child can read or not, and if you're allowing your child to, I mean, that's about one of the most basic things that you can do. But then when you've got like over a quarter of adults in the city of Philadelphia, imagine all of these, especially adults who have children who are raising kids, they don't know how to read, and so there's a legacy of illiteracy that's rampant, that's festering throughout a household, throughout a lot of Philadelphia households. Just people they don't know how to read, so it's not a priority. Since it's not a priority for them, it's not a priority to ensure that their kids are reading, and so they're just sending their kids to public school. This has to be a collaborative, it has to be a team effort between Philadelphia parents, Philadelphia communities. This is something that should be the highest, top priority, because if you want a surefire way to reduce these constant ongoing violence levels in the city, a surefire way to keep so many young black people, particularly young black men, out of jails, out of the criminal justice system, out of the incarceration pipeline, is to ensure that they read, that they are highly literate, that they are not just functionally literate, that they are literate. And Philadelphia, and just, this is not just Philadelphia, this is a problem, this is a crisis everywhere. It's just absolutely failing at it. Just failing at it. Just F-. The lowest grade that you can get. And so, no, it's not acceptable that the Philadelphia School District has not made noise about this, has not prioritized this, has not said, hey, you know what, we need to ensure it. And I understand, like, the math, the math performance rates, or the math proficiency rates, are not good either. In fact, I think math proficiency is just as bad. 21% of Philadelphia school students scored proficient or advanced on the state standardized math exam. I'm not a big fan of standardized tests, but you need something to kind of measure exactly where students are. And so clearly the Philadelphia School District is not interested in taking its majority black school district and making those students into scholars. They're not interested in it, 21%. So, I know I wasn't the greatest at math either growing up, but I made sure I could read. That's the one core thing you've got to have down. You can't function in society, particularly a society like this, when you can't read, you become a target. So, and this, it's all by design. And so the more or the less noise we make about this illiteracy crisis in a city like Philadelphia, the more we are contributing to this modern plantation, the more we are contributing to that crisis, the less noise we make. We're all responsible for it. Households, communities, neighborhoods, churches need to make a big stink about this, and they're not. school district, the mayor, city council. That should be like an ongoing conversation. And so, I mean, that goes back to those three core fundamental issues or foundational issues that we need to focus on and that we need to push forward, especially heading into 2021. You got a new administration and people are looking for something of a clean slate politically. Health, wealth, and education. Health, wealth, and education. And a big focus of education should be should be reading, should be literacy. I'm sorry, let's go to Jim out of West Philly. I'm sorry, I just noticed we have Jim out of West Philly who's been holding patiently for a reality check. Jim?
Hello, Charles. How you doing?
How you doing? All right. It's
All
good,
right.
good to hear from you.
This is a real reality check. You know, I knew about the school system when I was a teenager, 16. I fled at 16 when I was able to get working papers and leave. Best thing I ever did. I knew right then that I wasn't being equipped with what I need. I could do it better myself, and I've been successful. I don't suggest that to anybody else because I was an individual.
Yeah.
When my kids came along, I sent them anywhere but Philadelphia public schools. They went to St. Ignatius up until 8th grade. Then I was fortunate enough to be able to move them out into the county where they got decent education. My son went to a computer magnet school. Today he graduated. He graduated from Drexel. He's 38 now. He graduated from Drexel.
Right.
With a master's with a master's in biomedical engineering.
That's what I'm talking about. That's right.
And he's self-sufficient, makes way more than I make, and all. But I remember sitting down with him, teaching him how to count and math. Reading with him after helping him do his homework and everything. It's important, but I think a lot of times what happens now, the parents don't have the capability because they never got it, so they can't pass on things that they don't know.
Yeah.
They took the phonics out of school for education. That was the dumbest thing they did because that helped you teach you how to, read and write. So I think it's really criminal.
It is.
I think the school budget's over $3 billion a year to miseducate the kids.
Pretty much.
So I just,
I mean, I don't want to advocate taking money away from the school system, but obviously they're not using it to its fullest effect, and this should be factored into discussions that the school district has with teachers unions when it's time to negotiate contracts. Like Philadelphia school teachers should also. I mean, they got to take some. They got to take some responsibility for this as well. Like you're engaging in contractual conversations with the school district, with the city. You want more money, but then only 36% of third graders can read. Like, I mean, you gotta take some responsibility for that. Like, how you gonna ask for more money and kids in your classroom can't read? I'm just saying. I mean, it's just full circle. There's like holistic blame. There's blame to go around to everyone. I mean, all of us. We're not acting like a village like we should be on this issue, on this topic. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
If there's they're educators, so they should have the curriculum and educational program set forth that they take 12 years of a person's life, and they're supposed to be finished at that 12-year period to be functional in society. I think they're getting robbed. And you don't get to live your life over. If you're miseducated, you're going to wind up going through life like that, and it's criminal. So, yeah, everybody needs to make noise about it because it's definitely unacceptable. I mean, God, when my son was in Drexel, he wasn't the only black in the class, the biomedical engineering class of 150. He was the only American black out of 150. All right? Various people and everything.
No,
that's pathetic.
Yeah, you have to make that distinction, right?
So I mean, and then whether most people know it or not, all of these universities like the Penns and the Drexels and all, they're education factories for foreign students. The student population is almost 70% in those schools, foreign students. So the education's being exported out of our country.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a lot of things that are going on that people don't realize why we're in such a situation. And
right.
You're right. I mean, you got to stand up and tell them, hey, we want what we're paying for. We pay taxes. The taxes, I know I pay real estate taxes, use and occupancy taxes. That goes to education. I'm being robbed.
And I appreciate, I know University of Penn announced the other day that, you know, they're donating $100 million to help with school building remediation, you know, as far as the lead poisoning and the asbestos, a lot of the toxic material that's inside the schools. Well, we need another $200 million from Penn and other universities in the area to help with this illiteracy crisis. That's actually more important. That's what we need. So, you know, appreciate that they took that first step, you know, contributing to the school system to take care of the buildings, but, you know, need some resources to take care of minds, to take care of these young minds. Jim, let me... I'm sorry, I gotta let you go because I have to go to break. Let me take a quick break so we can go on to our next guest. Thanks so much, Jim, for those thoughts, and I appreciate everyone calling in. And so we just have to be. I'm being hard on myself too, because we're going to have to be a lot more intentional at raising this as an issue, as a key topic on this program. There are a lot of key topics I need to focus on because it's those structural issues. Those are the issues that count. It's not like when tragic events happen and then suddenly we have to react. You know, I'm trying really hard not to make this a knee-jerk program. We're like, okay, events happen, a tragedy strikes, and then, okay, we react to it. I want us to be proactive, or I want us to be proactive in terms of our thinking, become much more intentional and deliberative in how we tackle these issues. These are core structural issues. If you have a city where so many people can't read, where the majority of young people in a school system, because they have to attend the school system, so the majority of young people in the city cannot read, that is a recipe for a disaster. That's a recipe for current, present, future social instability. You have an unstable city. You have an unstable community. You have an unstable society. Like everything falls apart. That's barbarians at the gate, pretty much. And so that's why it's alarming. Like it has to work out. We all have an interest in this. So whether we're black, white, whatever, or rich, poor, you know, elected official or not, regardless of where we live, you know, we've got to work. We got to fix that. So anyway, let me take a break before I take up too much more time because we have to bring on our next guest. We're heading into our EcoWord segment. Sally Hardin is the interim director for the Energy and Environment War Room at the Center for American Progress. So we're going to talk about climate action, what the next administration will be doing on the climate crisis. Coming up next here on Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Enterprise Exterminators, located 4943 Wayne Avenue, specializing in lantern flies, termites, bed bugs, fleas, mice, and roaches. Do-it-yourself kits are available. Call now, 215-849-7070.
Listen to Laborers Live.
We created the weekend. We created the 40-hour work week. We just want enough to feed our family, be able to send our children to college, and let our next generation do better than we did.
To people that might have forgot how important unionism is in a country like the United States. People now infringing on our 8-hour work day, trying to work people more than 8 hours without overtime, trying to work people without benefits. In the long run, everybody's getting a fat paycheck except the worker. So this is really a wake-up call for America.
The struggle is continuous. Tune in to Laborers Live every Friday from 4 to 5 p.m. Sponsored by LESIT, the Laborers Employers Cooperation Education Trust of the Laborers District Council of Philadelphia and vicinity.
Local 332, Sam Staten Jr. Business Manager. Local 57, Esteban Vera Business Manager. Local 135, Dan Woodall Jr. Business Manager. Local 413, James Harper Jr. Business Manager. The Laborers District Council, Ryan Boyer Business Manager, and Tony Staten, Executive Director of LESIT.
Save the date, Friday, December 4th from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. for the 5th annual WURD Empowerment Experience. And this year, the virtual and on-air event will be extra special as we celebrate the career of radio veteran Cody Anderson and discuss the importance of independent black media. For more details about the 2020 WURD Empowerment Experience or to RSVP, visit WURDradio.com and stay tuned to WURD Radio. 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Lifting every voice till earth and heaven ring. This is WURD Radio.
96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia. Black Talk Media. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. We have by phone joining us now for our regular EcoWord segment, Sally Hardin. She is Interim Director for the Energy and Environment War Room at the Center for American Progress. Go to AmericanProgress.org for more information. Washington, D.C. based think tank who we also partner with. They provide us with the content that's necessary so we can have our weekly CAP corners. So now they're joining us for EcoWord, here to talk about what federal climate action or federal response to climate crisis will look like heading into a new Biden administration and what's needed. Sally joining us by phone. How are you doing, Sally? Can you hear me?
I'm doing well. I can hear you. Thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Excellent, excellent. No, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate this. The Energy and Environment War Room. That's an interesting name. That sounds fairly new and fresh at the center. So what is that exactly? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, thanks for asking. So this is something that was started about 3 years ago in response to the Trump administration's many, many attacks on environmental policy, public health protections. So trying to push back on those attacks and show the real impacts that those rollbacks are having on Americans' lives.
Okay, got it. And so, so it's been 3 years. You all, I'm sure, and especially you, are a bit excited or enthusiastic. I want to get your overall mood as far as like with this new administration or this new anticipated Biden administration. You feel that this is the kind of administration that's needed? Do you feel that the new president, the next president, will be as aggressive as he needs to be on climate crisis? Because based on the science that we're seeing, it seems like we're at the point of no return, that whatever action the country engages in, whatever action that we need to see from the federal government, it's going to have to be something very quick, very urgent, very immediate.
Yes, that's absolutely right. So I think overall, feeling pretty good about this election outcome. I think, as you said, we're at the point of no return. We're at the point of urgency to act. And if we had another 4 years of President Trump and his administration that really cozies up to, the fossil fuel industry and others, I think we would really, really run out of time to stop the climate crisis and its impact on people's lives. So, yes, feeling great about the election outcome. I think, that what we need to do now is just ensure that we keep up that momentum going into the first 100 days of this administration. And so, I think you might remember, and your listeners might remember, that President-elect Biden did a lot on the climate crisis leading up to the election itself. He did a number of ads featuring folks who are impacted by the climate crisis. Farmers in Michigan is one example. Wildfire firefighters out west, and he even, after the election was over, he even made climate kind of the opening argument of his campaign when. The day after the election, when the results were uncertain, he actually tweeted about rejoining the Paris Climate Agreement, which is the global climate agreement that a number of countries have committed to reduce emissions. So feeling pretty good about that, but I think we really do need to keep up momentum and pressure and not lose sight of how urgent it is to act on this crisis and how much acting on this crisis is actually in everyone's best interest, can have incredibly positive economic aspects to it, and as well as environmental.
Yeah, yeah. How much did climate issues or just environmental issues overall resonate with the 2020 electorate, Sally? So did we find that was an issue that was a driver for many voters in this election? What are we seeing, at least from the exit polling data you're sifting through or extrapolating?
Yeah, so I mean, still kind of going through all of that because it's such a bizarre election with all the mail-in ballots. But I do think that for the first time ever, exit polls polled on climate for voters, which is fantastic. And we saw in actually a Fox News exit poll that 70% of Americans listed climate change as a top concern, and 72% even said that they'd support a big funding package to help with green infrastructure and economic stimulus as well. And I think what we're really seeing, and I want to underscore this, is we saw higher youth voter turnout than ever before in this election, and climate change is a really significant issue among youth because it's our future that's going to be impacted by the climate crisis.
So you talk a lot too about the role that state and local governments can play in mitigating or reducing the impact of climate crisis, of what we're seeing happening with climate change and a lot of the pollution drivers factors that are out there as well. So because we have climate change, we have that happening, but we still have high pollution. We also have a lot of environmental injustice out there. But talk about that role, like how important, how critical it is, or how critical it's been, because pretty much the federal government, the current federal government, has been absent on this topic, has been absent on addressing this crisis. So how pivotal, how crucial have state and local policymakers been in addressing it or responding to it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think actually our federal government has not only been absent, but has actively been hurting our ability to respond to the climate crisis. So after withdrawing from the Paris Agreement as one of his first actions in office, a number of states banded together to form the U.S. Climate Alliance and say, hey, we, the states, we're still in to reach these Paris Climate Agreement goals by, committing to bold, ambitious action plans, by committing to reducing pollution in their own communities, really centering environmental justice, as you mentioned, which I think is another critical issue for the Biden administration. And, a lot of these states, local governments, universities, businesses, and others really stepped up to fill the void left by the federal government. And that's critical because, I think we've seen a lot of action in the last 3 years from states. We now have 25 states, including Pennsylvania, who are part of this U.S. Climate Alliance, whose governors have opted them in. We have those 25 states represent 60% of GDP across the country, so it's not an insignificant commitment from these states and local entities. We've also seen a number of states, 13, and as well as Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico, commit to even more ambitious targets of 100% clean energy or clean electricity by a given time frame, which I think is a great and important model for what we can get done at the federal level as well. And I think the last thing I really want to underscore is that a lot of the models that are presented in these states, kind of looking at the states as laboratories, really, really center environmental justice, as you mentioned. I think that there's a growing recognition, and this is something that we should have realized decades ago, and environmental justice leaders and organizers have been pushing for decades because of how impacted these communities have been by pollution and by the impacts of polluting facilities in their communities. But there's a real recognition now that we can't attack the climate crisis, we can't act on climate without reducing pollution in overburdened communities and ensuring that our climate action is addressing and making everyone's lives better. And I think that what we've seen in the States is that there is absolutely a path forward for that, which is really, really exciting.
Yeah, I wonder, however, Sally, how much alignment will we have between the new Biden administration, Democratic administration, and the states? Because when we look at the partisan composition of the states, we look at the number of governors in the states. The majority of governors currently still are Republican, right? Just by a slim majority. And the majority of state legislatures as well. I think there are about 29, well, currently 29 legislatures that are controlled by Republicans versus 19. I think we're about 20 that are controlled by Democrats. So, obviously, you've got this real divide here, this real split between Democrats and Republicans on climate priorities. Republicans just not showing any interest at all. I mean, as a party, as a general party, maybe you have individual Republican elected officials who've expressed some enthusiasm for getting involved on the climate issue or getting involved on issues with respect to the environment. But for the most part, the Republican Party is acting as if climate crisis doesn't exist. So how will the Biden administration be able to find some kind of alignment on climate action with these states?
Yeah, that's a great point, and I think there's kind of two sides to that coin. The first is that you're absolutely right, and it's really upsetting and disappointing the degree to which Republicans are burying their heads in the sand and refusing to acknowledge the real impacts of this crisis. Kind of similar to how this is on other issues as well. But I would also note that the U.S. Climate Alliance is bipartisan. There's a couple of Republican governors who have joined. They're kind of from states where the sentiment tends to be more liberal, so that's not the perfect example. But we've also, I think, sadly this year we've seen more named hurricanes than ever before. We've seen, devastating impact of hurricanes. There's one coming up on Central America right now that was just a couple of weeks ago by a different one. And we've also seen wildfires at a scale that we've just never experienced before. So I think that there's kind of this growing recognition across the country that we really are feeling the impacts of the climate crisis today, and that is having a growing, people can only ignore that for so long. And I think one great example of that is when we noted in our column is Arizona, which has been, until this year has been a pretty reliably red state, and where, they've experienced some severe droughts and some severe wildfires as well, and their Electricity Utilities Commission just voted, or it has a plan in the works to move to 100% clean electricity by 2050, and that's something that Senator-elect Mark Kelly from Arizona also ran on and acknowledged in his race in what is, again, a state where he was probably trying to appeal to a number of Republicans too. So all that goes to say, you're right, but I have a little bit of hope, and then also I think that this is why it's so critical that we have a Biden administration in the White House now, someone who not only believes in climate change, but is really going to act aggressively to reduce climate emissions and impacts and center environmental justice and create good jobs, just because I think that with that being the case, there's just so much more opportunity for federal action that will impact all the states as a result.
How do you think, Sally, we get to a point where there's much faster action with respect to the climate, where we can get an immediate turnaround on some of these ideas, some of these projects, where because I hear where folks are headed, they're trying to set targets and goals for 5, 10, 15, 20 years out, but we may not have that kind of time. And so are you feeling optimistic, or is there any chance that in the immediate future, we're seeing like a massive, kind of federal mobilization or industry mobilization taking place on projects like what Iceland is doing, for example, right? Iceland is going completely zero carbon emission. They're actually turning their CO2 emissions into rock, right? They're doing something called carbon capturing, and then they're essentially powering, and about this, they're powering their whole country on geothermal energy. So how can we immediately create projects like this for this country, for this nation, serve as a model for other large economies, other large countries, where we're doing things like carbon capturing, and we're doing that immediately. We're putting the investments in for clean energy, just setting up like immediate clean energy infrastructure. I'm a bit worried about like these long-term 10, 20, 30-year targets or goals that people are setting up, because it doesn't feel like we have that kind of time.
No, I totally agree with you, and I think that's a really important thing to note. And it's like Right. It's great that we're setting these targets. It's great that we are seeing this ambition and being aggressive. But you're right that it doesn't mean that things are happening immediately. And particularly what we're seeing with state budgets and COVID, because so much of that money has to go to addressing the very, very immediate crisis of the pandemic and the economic implications of that. The state budgets that were set aside to address climate change are being a little bit impacted by that. So I will say I feel the same scary despair that you just iterated, but I also really do want to underscore that, what you mentioned about a big mobilization is a possibility and could have immediate impacts, So I think while we're unlikely to see a massive, massive mobilization at the scale that's needed to meet the crisis in this first year of the Biden administration because of the makeup of Congress, because it's unlikely that the Senate will be Democratic, or, if it is Democratic, it'll only be by a couple of votes. I think that what that means is that we're going to have to look to any coronavirus and pandemic relief as an opportunity to include a climate lens in there. Because, and I don't think that needs to be partisan. I think it can be things like what you just said, infrastructure, building back better, which is the Biden-Harris slogan, creating jobs, just making sure that all that infrastructure and those jobs are good, clean energy jobs, good green jobs. And that can be anything from, transportation to the power sector to pretty much anything else. And I also think that, it's critical that we're reducing pollution in communities who are overburdened by it. That's immediate action that we can see. And we're seeing that happen in the States right now. So I'm very, I do feel like there are incremental steps that we can take immediately to address this crisis and kind of get going and get the ball rolling.
Yeah, I agree with you, and the messaging has to be clear on that too when that happens, because the moment the Biden White House says, hey, we're going to insert X amount of billions of dollars for clean energy projects in this pandemic relief bill, you can already predict what Republicans are going to say. Republicans are like, why are we putting money into a Green New Deal and into they're going to distort the messaging on that. So the messaging has to be crystal clear, has to be sharp. It has to say, hey, listen, in order for us to get through the pandemic, we're going to have to create jobs. Clean energy infrastructure creates this X number of jobs, full stop. Just keep going, just make it real simple and punchy, and it just cuts through immediately that Republican messaging that we're going to hear, because Republicans are going to say, oh, hey, they're creating these obscure clean energy projects, and they're trying to, or they're funding a project that prevents cows from making less gas. They're going to come up with all sorts of idiotic, and I can almost see it, because they're like, we need to focus on pandemic relief, not on creating pork for clean energy projects. I can see that happening now, and it's like there's going to have to be like this crystal. I'm hoping that folks, particularly in the big green movement or the big green space and the environmental advocacy space, are real sharp and real clear on that message. Like look what happened with the Green New Deal. Completely distorted, and so, which is unfortunate. It was very tragic because there were some good aspects to that proposal that we should have moved forward on, but we didn't, just because of the messaging game that was played. We've been talking to the Center for American Progress's Sally Harden. She's interim director for the Energy and Environment War Room at the Center for American Progress. Go to americanprogress.org for more information. Also to read her new column entitled State Climate Leadership is Coming to the Nation's Capital in 2021. Go to americanprogress.org to read up on that. Sally joining us by phone for an EcoWord segment. Sally, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me on.
All right. Take care. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back on the other side, we're joined by State Representative Joanna McClinton, who is the newly minted House Minority Leader in the Pennsylvania State Legislature. She's going to be joining us next to talk about her priorities, her agenda heading into the next year here in the next session of the Pennsylvania State House here on Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com. WURD TV, WURD app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
To all caregivers and seniors, are you tired of the fake promises and looking for a home care agency that really cares about you and delivers on promise? Abington Caregivers Inc. has a sign-on bonus for you. At Abington Caregivers, you come first. Call us today, 215-600-3434 for all your home care needs. We service Philadelphia, Bucks, and Montgomery County. Call 215-600-3434. Abington Cares.
Need a new mattress? Stop by to see Julian, the Mattress Man, located at 7421 Stenton Avenue. You deal directly with the owner, Julian, to ensure the best prices on name brand mattresses like Sealy, Posturepedic. Call 215-424-5550. That's 215-424-5550.
Monday through Thursday, keep it locked to WURD Radio. At 6 a.m., start your day with the Power Hour, hosted by Bishop Dwayne Royster and Reverend Mark Kelly Tyler. At 7, it's Wake Up with WURD with Solomon Jones. At 10 a.m., it's Reality Check with Charles Ellison. Then at 1 p.m., it's The Source, hosted by Andrea Lawful Sanders on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, and the Black Women's Leadership Council on Wednesdays. At 4 p.m., it's Evening Words with Nick Taliaferro. Then at 7, it's Save Space with Sincerely Sarita. At 9 p.m., round up your day with Keeping It Real with the Reverend Al Sharpton. Keep your dial locked to WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Streaming live on WURDradio.com and the WURD Radio app. Or watch live on WURD TV via Facebook and YouTube. WURD Radio. Independent Black Media.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check. We're here on 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, and WURD app. Joining us now is State Representative Joanna McClinton. She is now the minority leader for House Democrats in the Pennsylvania State House and the Pennsylvania State Legislature. Go to pahouse.com/McClinton for more information. And also, she represents the 191st Legislative District, parts of Delaware and Philadelphia counties in Pennsylvania. She joins us by phone here. Madam Minority Leader, congratulations to you.
Charles, good morning. It's so great to be back.
All right, good morning, good morning. All right, really appreciate this. It's good to have you back as well. So, so what does that mean? Let's talk about that, because you're the first woman. You're the first woman to become House Minority Leader. Obviously, the first woman of color, first black woman to be elected as floor leader in the Pennsylvania House. So that's a big deal. And so, what are your first impressions of what you'll need to focus on as you enter that new role?
Absolutely. So, for those who are not familiar and don't fault yourselves, Harrisburg is not on our local news all the time.
Mm-hmm.
They're not covered all the time, but
unfortunately, right.
Yeah, you know, you see D.C. and, of course, you see City Hall a lot more often. So those are the chambers in each caucus, the Democratic caucus and the Republican caucus in the House and the Senate. They have leaders that the members elect. So in the House, there are 7 spots, and then there's Speaker. Now, unfortunately, the House Democrats did not win the majority in the election that just occurred. So we do not have the opportunity to put forward one of our members for Speaker. However, we do have, 7 leadership slots, and I was the caucus chair, so I ran the meetings every time we had session to talk about the bills. But sadly, among the losses that we had to endure, our leader, Frank Dermody, from out in Oakmont, right outside Pittsburgh, about an hour outside the city, he lost his reelection bid. So, to say that we've all had a really sour taste in our mouths and a bit of disappointment is an understatement. And although I was not gearing up to run for leader, when somebody who's been in charge for a while is no longer around, I think it makes all of us look at ourselves, look at our skills, and then for me personally, I had to realize that there's not going to be a lot of opportunities in the near future for women. So if I didn't leap, even if I fell, I said, but if I don't leap, all the women who are in our caucus, I would be a disappointment to them to not even try to make an effort and put a coalition of votes together so that we can at least have a positive future for women in our caucus and beyond.
Yeah. And talk about that too, or explain that, or describe that, if you will, Representative, like illustrate for listeners exactly how that role operates, a House Minority Leader, so they can understand, maybe kind of in clear sort of elementary terms, hey, this is what I will be doing as a House Minority Leader. This is what a House Minority Leader does.
Absolutely. So one of the main functions in Harrisburg when we're in session for the House Minority Leader is to lead the debates and finish every debate. So whenever an issue is up for debate, no matter what it is, whether it's on affecting our budget or whether it's on our human services, I am the person in the Democratic caucus that will have the last word for each issue that we debate. And then when we're off of the floor, the entire operation, in Harrisburg, there are several hundred employees, and then we have legislative offices throughout the entire Commonwealth. All of them are under my office and my supervision. So I will be fully responsible for everything from Democratic messaging to strategy to our bills, what's a priority for us to argue, and getting out in front of the press, and really bringing our members together and empowering them so that all of their voices are uplifted in the Capitol and back in their home districts.
So what are your key policy or legislative priorities, particularly as you go into a new session in the Pennsylvania House? And I know a lot of listeners are asking, particularly people, constituents in your district, they're asking, how will that benefit Philadelphia and your district?
Absolutely. So it is a major benefit for people back home because some of the other things that aren't in the press as much, leaders have influence on certain appointments, certain boards, certain commissions. This really helps to balance out the fact that our city and our region, we give the state most of its budget every year. But because of a few different factors, most of the power has been in the western part of the state. Most of the power, whether you're talking about appropriations chair or caucus chair, all of these spots up until 2 years ago were just about Western PA. So for Philly, when you think about all the things that we have as priorities, funding our schools, the city council members have been working on raising the wage. We need to do it on the state level. Police reform. Sadly, my neighbor was killed by police just about 3 weeks ago. We have real priorities. And for my district back home, this is a big deal because I got the microphone just about. So when you talk about, why is it important for us back home, or are we going to miss you and not see you as much, understand, no, I won't be able to come to every event or be around the way I usually am, but I will have the microphone and be able to influence the priorities that we have as a caucus. And that is pretty powerful. So I hope that you all don't see this as a loss, but see it as a benefit and something that will help and strengthen our priorities as Democrats.
Can I say, I see an opportunity here where stars align, Representative. So, okay, you're House Minority Leader. I was just talking last week to City Council Member at Large, Derek Green. He's now chair of the Municipal League, and that's the Municipal League for the whole Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And so, he'll have a leadership role there in terms of all those conversations and collaborations and representation of cities throughout the entire Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And you've had a home state kid. You've had Joe Biden win the presidency. Even though he was senator for Delaware, he's from Pennsylvania. Delaware is pretty much, a part of our region. So, there's an expectation there because Philly helped Joe Biden win. Philly was that crucial corner, that crucial battleground corner that clinched it for Joe Biden, especially with respect to the Electoral College. Can your leadership role and can that alignment, that political alignment that I'm seeing right there, I just kind of gave you all levels, state, local, and federal, can that alignment there translate into more resources for a really distressed and troubled city like Philadelphia? What does that mean? Because people are also going to be asking that, what does that mean in terms of, they see what it means in terms of profile, but then they're like, what does that mean in terms of budget, in terms of actual tangibles coming to Philadelphia?
So that is really interesting that you pointed out from the White House, literally all the way down to the State House, that, we see our area and our region being represented for the first time in a very long time. The only other black leader we've had, as he went from whip to speaker, was Kay Leroy Irvis. and he was from Pittsburgh. So I think he does a lot for our city, a lot for our time. I mean, Charles, you write so extensively about the poverty that so many of us in our communities are facing. That is nothing that can be wiped out with one bill. But that comes from economic development. That comes from, investments and opportunities. And for too long, opportunities haven't been available for Black businesses in Philly for state contracts. That is something that I am examining to see how can it be more equitable. We never want anybody to hand us anything except for next Thursday at our homes, respectively, for Thanksgiving. Hand me some of that pie, hand me a piece of that cake. But when it comes to opportunities, we haven't been able to even compete for them because people have been holding back these opportunities from us. And so that is why there is little development and little business and economic opportunity for our constituents, our neighbors, our friends and family. So as far as I'm concerned, that is also a priority for us. And I look forward to working with Councilmember Green. I heard from him. I heard from a lot of folks. So if I didn't respond to your text message, it's no shame. It just was like an avalanche of text messages between last Thursday and the weekend. But I look forward to working with Derek Green. I look forward to working with the president-elect as soon as he gets office. And I hope that everybody is doing what they can to make sure that Georgia sees success. Because that is really key and pivotal, from stimulus checks to federal minimum wage. I mean, that Senate race, as you know, and all your listeners know, that can help President Biden and Vice President Harris tremendously have a little less warfare and more victories.
Yeah. What do you think? We're talking with State Representative Joanna McClinton. She represents Pennsylvania's 191st Legislative District as parts of Delaware and Philadelphia counties. She is also incoming House Minority Leader. She has been elected as the House Minority Leader. That is a big deal, Philadelphia, in case you didn't know. So you have, your hometown girl is going to be one of the major leaders in the Pennsylvania state legislature. So definitely take note of that. Your constituents, if they don't know by now, they hopefully are listening in and they know now that has happened. So she's joining us here on Reality Check to talk a bit about that and what that will look like in the future as they enter into a new session there in Harrisburg. So the Democrats didn't quite get the changes that they had hoped for in this particular election cycle, Representative. I wonder what do you think your relationship will be like with your Republican colleagues now that you're in this new role? I mean, that's already been a rather treacherous, problematic relationship, and that fault doesn't lie with you or many of your colleagues from the Philadelphia caucus either. It's just kind of the nature of things when it comes to Harrisburg and the nature of Republicans. But what do you think that relationship will look like?
So I think we all know that, especially under this president, politics has just become much more visceral and almost like a deadly game than it used to be. When I was working in the Senate for my Senator Anthony Hardy Williams, I often observed that across the aisle approach from those members. And for staff, we did it all the time. But in the last few years, it's gotten really, really lethal. And so what my goal will be is to, let them know that I am going to stand up for my members. First of all, the first woman to do it, so there's no pressure, as they say, Charles. No pressure.
Yeah,
seriously,
no pressure at all, right.
To see that I'm fighting for them, that I take their needs seriously, that we're on the floor, doing what we have to do strategically. But one of the things I learned as an assistant public defender years ago in court is you can do your job, you can go into war, you can fight, but you don't have to come out as an enemy. You can still work together as often as needed to move things forward. And that is my goal. Not let us get stuck on these silly things and these issues that are not important, but look at all of our districts, rural to urban to suburban. What are the needs and how can we move it forward? You all want to take the credit? Take the credit. But, listen to the issues that my folks are bringing up, and let's not just stomp them out as if they're all bad ideas, but let's do what we have to do in terms of arguing, and then let's continue to sit down. That will be my goal, not to be, just fighting and combative, because that doesn't necessarily lead to productivity. We need productivity, and people used to always say that when we had the budget stalemate, maybe if there were women at the top, we could get something done. So that'll be my goal, to really get something done that's positive.
Yeah, you definitely have to get something done. I mean, that's just how legislatures operate. You have to be a policymaker. I mean, that's the job description, right? But some people out there, they may say it's just really difficult when you're looking at the type of Republicans that you'll have to work with to reach that goal. These are Republicans. These are the same state Republicans who've been talking about or questioning the legality of black votes. Just basically, calling, just throwing out these racist dog whistles, saying that these are not, that votes, or especially black votes coming out of places like Philadelphia, are not legal votes. Actively for years now, attempting to obliterate the voting rights of us, of your constituents, your people. I mean, I would, I don't know. I guess, well, I'm not in your position, but I guess if I was in your position, I'd be considering, like, counter lawsuits, or looking at ways in which they violated the state constitution, trying to violate and take away people's rights like that. But, people are going to ask, like, how do you get over that? Like, it's, how do you show constituents, how are Democrats, especially when you need to head into 2022 to try to retake that House, how are you going to show people that you're fighting for them, that you're fighting against that kind of anti-democratic way?
So first of all, we know it's rhetoric. The president started this early in 2020, mail-in ballots, you can't trust them. Then he later told people to vote twice. I mean, and of course, now he's not being honest about what occurred and not conceding. So unfortunately, my colleagues in Harrisburg have literally been following his playbook. They have been following his playbook to the max and to the T. They had a nerve to say, as soon as the election was over, well, we could have done pre-canvassing, but the House Democrats held it up. I'm like, well, wait a second. We don't have the vote to hold anything up. So why are you lying to the public? So I think it is important to call a spade a spade. When I say I'm going to work with them, it is not in any way to pacify them or to let them get away with misleading the public. Lies are lies, and people need to know what's not true. There has not been voter fraud in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I mean, our Republican commissioner in the city, Al Schmidt, came under attack, receiving death threats from people in his own party because of these lies. So I think we're in a moment where we have to continue to present the truth, combat every lie, not allow it to be something that people think, oh, it's a joke. Like, no, it's serious. This is democracy, because we have elections every 6 months. So we don't want this to continue into the May primary and into next November. And, of course, once we get our new maps, posturing to have competitive races where they had gerrymandered these districts in the worst ways, Charles, in 2022. So we do have a lot to rebuff, and we are not going to allow their rhetoric to just be told to the media and to the public and not have counter attacks. And my goal will be next year is to even get ahead of their stuff, so that we are making sure that our message is heard and it's resounding in our home districts across the whole state.
Yeah. What do you think that strategy? Because, I mean, in that role as minority leader, you're also a leader for Democrats in the state. So you're going to play a central role in strategy for state legislative elections coming up in 2022. I don't feel that there was a whole lot of noise made around that. Like, I know it seemed like Pennsylvania and Democrats in Pennsylvania were really focused, or were forced to get focused on winning the presidency for Joe Biden, but you all had a real opportunity there. I mean, I remember seeing Pennsylvania House as one of those 10 legislative chambers around the country that was promised to flip, and it didn't happen. Yep. So how do you get people to pay more attention to, and you and I have talked about this extensively, and you know where I stand on this. I feel like state capitals and the action that takes place in state capitals, that's the most important policy action. It's more important than what's happening in Washington, D.C. So I appreciate what happens in the state legislature, but how do you get people to feel the exact same way and to get the kind of turnout you need to turn the tide in 2022?
So we had a few things that we faced this year that we did not anticipate in terms of the electoral politics. So we did not anticipate a new surge of Trump voters showing up in every district. I mean, every district. Our outgoing leader on his election day was seeing people you've never seen before. He served those folks since the mid-'90s. So it's like, well, who are these folks? You know, people were coming out across the country Every chamber that was predicted to flip did not flip. We're all like disappointed because we do know that what happens in state legislatures helps so much, from pay equity to fair wages to making sure that there's access to health care. Like none of it, was able to get on the agenda. And in a way, our House candidates and Senate candidates are almost in competition for a limelight with the presidency. I mean, in competition for staff, campaign staff, with the presidency. Everybody wants to work on the presidential election. So the good thing is that in the midterm, of course, we'll have a Dem in the White House. So normally that kind of counters our goals, but we'll have fairer maps. And if you have a fairer map, maps that currently exist are just totally ridiculous. They were made in 2010, and at that time we did not have the Supreme Court, but Democrats now have the majority on the Supreme Court. So even if they throw out the maps that we create next year, we will get fairer maps, the same way they did with the congressional districts in 2018. They looked at them, we submitted ours, they said, those are too gerrymandered, and they made their own maps, which were just competitive. You don't give away the cake, but make them competitive. The Republicans have made these maps such a way that we can't even compete in places because there's so few Dems, and they do it intentionally. They say, we'll keep this borough that's Democratic, we'll keep this township, but then we'll go all the way over here, miles out of the way. You can't even draw a circle or a square over many of the rural districts. I have a colleague in southwestern PA whose district spans 700 miles. Excuse me?
Wow.
Y'all can't find 60,000 people a little closer to Representative Pam Snyder? That far? I mean, it's almost laughable. So we have a lot of work to do to make our elections important. And I think the first thing we do inside the building is engage. So many folks are hearing from their electeds, or they get something in the mail and toss it. No, folks, as much as we work across this city to get Joe Biden and Kamala Harris in the White House, make sure you know who your local folks are in the state legislature and how you can get engaged. Because all of us, we got cousins in Altoona and upstate and in Erie and different places, but I think we have to organize on the same level and with the same expediency we did for this president.
All right. We've been talking with the new Pennsylvania House Minority Leader, State Representative Joanna McClinton. She represents the 191st Legislative District in Delaware and Philadelphia counties. Go to pahouse.com/McClinton. Also at Rep McClinton on social media, on Twitter more specifically, joining us here on Reality Check as she every once in a while does. She gives us a little bit of her time. Really appreciate you. I know you got a busy schedule ahead of you, Representative, so really do appreciate this. You giving us some time on this this Wednesday midday morning. So thanks again. Please be safe out there. Good luck to you. We'll talk again.
All right. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks, Charles.
All right. You do the same. Take care. Okay. Let's take a break. And when we come back on the other side, 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. Phone lines are open. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Let's take a break and we'll be right back.
Do you have a K-12 student who does not have reliable internet at home? PHL Connected is here to provide eligible students with free high-speed internet to make sure they always stay connected to digital learning. Dial 211 and press 1 to ask questions and get connected today for free. The hotline is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, so call anytime. That's 211 to get your student PHL connected today.
Hi, this is Jeff Brown from Brown's Family ShopRites and Fresh Grocers. Are you thinking about a part-time job to help out with the cost of the holidays? We have plenty of openings. You can apply online at shoprite.com/careers or freshgrocer.com/careers. Come join the Brown family today and help us serve the people of Philadelphia. Have a great holiday.
Keeping you informed. As a community service, WURD Radio and the Black Doctors COVID-19 Consortium wants to keep you informed about where you can get no-cost, barrier-free COVID-19 testing this week. These locations offer free flu shots and coronavirus testing. Tuesday, November 17th, from 12 noon till 4 p.m. at Esperanza, 4261 North 5th Street. Thursday, November 19th from 4 p.m. till 7 p.m. at Sharon Baptist Church, 3955 Conshohocken Avenue. Friday, November 20th from 10 a.m. till 2 p.m. at Deliverance Evangelistic Church, 2001 West Lehigh Avenue. And Saturday, November 21st from 11 a.m. till 4 p.m. at the Leah Chorus Center, 1776 North Broad Street. Stay informed and stay well with WURD Radio. 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Let me go to Horace out of West Philly who's calling for a Reality Check. Horace?
Hey, how you doing, Charles?
How you doing, sir?
Great. I want to go back to your education piece. You know, people always bring up the K to third grade, but let's look at the high schools. Now, you have at least 50 high schools, and this information I'm getting ready to tell you is out of the school district SPR report, so anybody can look it up. There's 50 high schools, and if you go by the academic scale being 60%, and we're talking about student achievement, you have at least 47 schools that fall under 60% in student achievement. Now, did you know out of the 50 schools, you had 24 schools that come in at 0% in student achievement? Now, when we say student achievement, this is the school district's definition: reading on grade level, proficiency in English, language arts, and math. Now, there's only 3 schools, here again, your Central High School, your Masterman, and your Engineering and Science, all special admit schools. You know, so I just wish people stop blaming the victim. You know, there's layers of cover up here. You know, these schools, when you have 0% in student achievement, but yet the principals give the teachers between 90 and 100% in their ratings on proficiency. So how do you have 0% achievement, but yet the teachers are being rated at 90 to 100%? But what people don't look at is the teachers' attendance. You know, we have teachers that aren't coming to work, and this is across the whole school district. And what's sad about that is this: it's a union shop, and we always talk about union work, union employees. But here, these teachers are protected by a union that, hey, you know, people that work in a union, you're not going to get fired. You're just not going to get fired. So stop blaming the victim, because here, when you blaming the victim, meaning the parents or households, you're talking at least over 100,000 households. You know, this is what it affects, 100,000 students. So it's not so much a rallying or parents got to step up. No, the district has to step up to these employees and say, hey, you're not coming to work. You're fired. You know, we get fired. And here again, just to add another piece to it, don't feel sorry for these teachers. They make between $42,000 and $73,000 for 10 months worth of work, and they don't even want to come to work 10 months. So, listening audience, I don't know what it's going to take to say, hey, we got to get rid of this superintendent. We have to restructure these schools. Remember, I'm 65. So when I went to school, they had junior high schools. They had all that stuff in this junior high schools, the cooking and mechanical drawing and all that stuff. And then when I got to a high school, they had driver's ed. You know, the best thing the district can do at this point for this COVID period for these high school graduates is help them attain a driver's license. You know, a driver's license is going to help them more than that certificate or whatever they're giving them now when they graduate. I don't know what you call it. But help them get a driver's license. You know?
Right. But let me ask you this. You know, I think you raise all correct points, Horace. I agree with you, and not saying that we should blame the victim. You know, when I was talking earlier about, like, you know, there's got to be parent involvement on this issue. You know, and obviously there is some responsibility that's going to have to lay on the parents, but also understanding. I mean, when you got a city where a quarter of the adults are also functionally illiterate, then that's creating like an environment where like there's a whole lot of adults out there, they're not encouraging their kids to read. So you need that parent backup, you need that parent advocacy to push the school district into wanting to tackle this issue a lot more urgently, and to taking very drastic measures like firing teachers for non-performance on like reading and math proficiency, for example. I mean, parents are their young people's or are their children's best advocates. And I just know this from personal experience as a parent. We all know that as parents. I mean, when you don't advocate for your child, to these schools, to these teachers, to these administrators, to the principals, then they automatically assume that, you know, you're either doing the bare minimum or that you don't care. And so they're going to do the bare minimum and they don't care. So, I mean, we are our best advocates for our children. So, I mean, I'm not blaming the victim, but this is going to have to be a complete full circle, you know, all village effort here in order to get us to the point where we need to be. You understand what I'm saying? So it's not like, I don't want to get into blameology. I'm not about blaming the victim, but I don't think that there's any problem with encouraging us as a community, as a collective, to play a very active and aggressive role here to address this illiteracy crisis. You see what I'm saying? But I agree with you completely. I agree with everything you just said. Yeah, I mean, like, I don't understand like why this is not coming up as an issue. Like we just had today, we have like right now as we speak, we have the city council having hearings, or having its first hearing, public hearing about the city's contractual or labor negotiations with the city police force, with the city police union. We need to be doing that with respect to negotiations between the city and the teachers union, because it's like this has to come up as an issue. It's like, why are you asking for more money if like you were saying, if there's a cluster of high schools in the city where there's like 0% achievement, like I don't understand why you would get a pay raise or a bonus in that respect. And I know that there's some teachers out there, I know they work hard, and I know some teachers are listening now and they're like, how could he say that? Well, it's like, well, we'll call in. I mean, or let's have a conversation, or tell your superintendent. I've also reached out to the head of the Philadelphia Teachers Union. I actually get the National Teachers Union president, Randy Weingarten. Always, when we call her, she graciously comes on this program. I can't even get the Philadelphia Teachers Union president to come on here to talk about these issues. Like, I don't know how to get in touch with them. Who knows? So they don't want, you know, people who are educators or in charge of education in Philadelphia, with the exception of Otis Hackney, who occasionally comes in, they don't want to have these conversations. It's like an uncomfortable conversation. Well, then don't teach. Don't be involved in education. Don't be in the education field. If you can't have these, because it's any conversation about your child, my child, our children, it's going to be an uncomfortable conversation, but we have to have them. I'm sorry, go ahead, Horace.
No, well, people talk about parent involvement. The district has creatively blocked parent involvement. You know, me and my family, we attended almost every meeting when there was, you know, no COVID. And to have a staff of maybe 20, 30 people charged for parent involvement, and then they get out 10 parents. I mean, come on. I mean, you have a parent, you go to the principal, you complain about something. Now, what's more important? You know, the team player being the principal, or that parent trying to say, hey, this teacher's not doing what they're supposed to do. You know, I mean, we talk conspiracy, you know, that's a heavy word to throw out there, but there's layers of cover-up when you're talking about people making over $100,000. This is a very lucrative industry. And yes, there is a $3 billion attached to it, and over $1.2 billion goes to teachers' salaries and benefits.
It's good points, Horace. I'm gonna have to let you go, but and so, you know, the educators, the schools, the principals, everyone's gonna have to work on that. You know, parents are gonna have to make bigger demands. We as a community, as a Philadelphia community, since we're talking about Philadelphia specifically, are going to have to make those demands. I mean, you know, if we're going to have protest movements on everything else, this is one thing where like it calls for that kind of energy, that kind of urgency. I'm just not seeing it. People are acting like it's just, well, it's just the way things are. It's just the way it is. I mean, if folks can get out there in the streets and protest about things, and mash things up over tragedies like Walter Wallace Jr., you should be, I'm not saying you should be, you know, creating any kind of social unrest, but people should be out there with that kind of same kind of energy, more energy about the fact that the majority, we can safely say or assume that the majority of children in the city of Philadelphia cannot read and are not reading at their grade level. We can safely say that. That is not right. Let me go to Leon out of Center City, who's calling in for a reality check. Mr. Leon?
How you doing, man?
How you doing, sir?
Okay, the last caller was right on the money. I agree with that last caller.
He was.
And I'd like to take it back to who's in charge.
Yeah.
So who's in charge of our children's education?
Yeah.
Certainly not the parents. The parents not even at the table. It's really the politicians. Like, I mean, the state was in control of the school board through the SRC. The city politicians said, we want it back. And they set it up, a situation where parents and citizens do not have the right to vote on the school board. But guess who has the right to vote on? The city council.
Yeah.
So they brought it back for them to be more in control. But what you see is it's going to be the same old soup. That if they were in concern with our children's education, you think they would fight for an elected school board? Would voters have a right to say who sits on the school board? And to show you how much that, I didn't hear all your shows, so somebody might have covered this, but there are 3 school board people who have resigned already from the school board. They're operating with a 6-person board.
Yeah.
Okay, so why isn't that talked about? I don't hear the politicians saying, well, since obviously the people that we've been putting on the school board, they don't want the job. And why don't we allow...
But do you feel like, Mr. Leon, do you feel like, the overall tone in this city, the overall, like, level of discussion or mood, I don't feel like the city's really prioritizing, a situation like this as it should be. It's not, I don't hear that kind of noise about, like, education as a priority. I hear people in Philly protesting about everything else but education. And I understand we got to protest about those things that make us angry and that get us upset. But I did these protests that happened over the summer, and no one said anything about K through 12 education or about the fact that the majority of children in the city cannot read. No one said anything about that.
To me, all of that,
except for Woody out of the barbershop, and then maybe me occasionally touching on it and getting fired up like I am right now. The people just not talking about it, like they don't care. But go ahead, Mr. Leon.
Yeah, and what I'm talking about is not just to make noise about education, but to make noise about the fact that African Americans in Philadelphia are the only folks in the whole state of Pennsylvania where parents and voters can go and elect the school board. We cannot do that in Philadelphia. Every school district in the state can do that.
That's a good point.
So if you're going to blame parents, I'm not going to accuse particularly, but blame the ones who took the vote, the Democratic vote, away from the parents. Gave it to the politicians.
But I still, and I'm gonna let you go, Mr. Leon, so I can go to a break. But I still feel like, once again, it's got to be a village effort. It's got to be a village. It's got to be a full circle, holistic village effort. So I agree with you. I agree with Horace wholeheartedly. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Those are like nice, elements, things to consider, and things we need to do or need to consider, evaluate and plan on and activate moving forward. But parents are going to have to be much more aggressive on this issue in their households and outside of their households, and putting pressure on the public conversation to include this issue regarding illiteracy. But anyway, I don't want to take up too much time because I don't want to hog up the break. We have to take a break. when we come back on the other side, we have Robin Erickson, who's a principal researcher at the Conference Board, and we'll be talking about a survey about people returning to work. What employees and employers are doing about that, what some of the data tells us, how people are returning to work or considering returning to work in this pandemic environment. Coming up next here on Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Just one more step. You got it.
You're doing great. This is the sound of a nationally ranked top rehabilitation hospital, home to the largest collection of robotics in the United States, where we continually exceed patient expectations. Because no injury is too severe or too minor for our care.
There you go.
This is the sound of success. Moss Rehab. Challenge accepted.
Seniors, does your doctor regularly reach out to check on you? Can you walk into your doctor's office and see them if you need to? Do you have your doctor's cell phone number and can you call them anytime, day or night? At Dedicated Senior Medical Center, their only specialty is caring for seniors. Dedicated makes it easy to get the primary care you deserve. Doctors spend more time with patients than the doctors you may be used to. They offer telehealth visits, help you get your medications, and even make sure you get to your appointments. If your doctor isn't treating you like family, it's time to say yes to Dedicated Senior Medical Center. Call Dedicated Senior Medical Center today to schedule a visit and find out what you're missing. Call 267-443-1900. That's 267-443-1900. Appointments are available now.
WURD Radio presents the following wellness tip to support our listeners with mindfulness and motivation as we continue to navigate the pandemic together.
Hi, this is Halana, your resident health and wellness coach, with tips to help you stay well. Many of us have heard this term before, but may not know what it really means. Compassionate living brings mindfulness and peace to the center of your daily life. Compassionate living can look like this. Number 1, be gentle with yourself and those around you. Number 2, choose to speak kindly to others, even when you're upset. Number 3, become a good listener and practice empathy at home and at work. We sometimes think in order to live with compassion, we have to become someone else. Not so. In fact, allowing peacefulness to be at the center of our daily interactions is something we can practice every day. Go ahead and try it today. Stay well with WURD. Happy living.
Stay well with WURD. Connect with us at WURDradio.com.
This is WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia. Independent Black Media. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
All right, so only a little less than 30% of workers are expected to return to the workplace by the end of 2020 or heading into 2021, at least according to results from a recent survey conducted by the Conference Board. The Conference Board, a New York-based member-driven think tank that looks at issues like this, what workers are thinking, what employers are thinking or planning for in this moment of pandemic. And here to talk a little bit more about this survey, about this study, is Conference Board's principal researcher, Robin Erickson. Go to, by the way, if you want to learn more about the Conference Board and you also want to check out that survey, go to conference-board.org, conference-board.org for more information. Robin joins us by Skype, and she's here on WURD Radio and WURD TV with us live. Robin, how are you doing? Good afternoon.
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me, Charles.
Excellent, excellent. What prompted this survey, and what's some of the methodology that you deployed in capturing this data? How many people total throughout the country did you talk to, did you survey to get this kind of response?
So actually, at the very beginning of the pandemic, back in April, the Conference Board was one of the first organizations to do a full-length survey tracking human capital responses to COVID-19. And so if you think about it, we did the survey at the end of April and published it by the end of May. But that was, the survey data was COVID had only been around for about 8 weeks at that point. So we did publish the initial report. It was called From Immediate Responses to Planning for the Reimagined Workplace, Human Capital Responses to COVID-19.
Okay.
But what most of us had hoped would be short-term responses to the pandemic have actually evolved to have long-term repercussions, as we all know, because COVID is continuing. And so there are long-term repercussions on both the workplace and the workforce. So we did a sequel survey. We repeated the online survey in September 2020. We had 330 human capital executives respond to the survey, mostly from large companies.
Mostly from large companies too. And so now, you know, looking at these trends that we're seeing as far as like the sorts of decisions that employers are making and calling employees back into the office space, what are some of the trends that you're kind of seeing like right now, especially as we're heading into the holiday season? You know, it's interesting, right? Because like throughout much of the throughout kind of midway through the pandemic, people, I guess, felt like they had established some kind of rhythm where we'd have to be safe, but we could sort of operate in this pandemic environment in some form. We could at least, you know, leave our houses, leave our homes, and not be in a lockdown situation. And employers seem to sort of react or respond that way. But that's like one of those short-term decisions that employers made. What are kind of the trends, and do some of those trends, do they differentiate according to region, according to state? What are some kind of general trends that you're seeing as far as those decisions?
Okay, so you have to remember that our new survey, I need to give you the name of that, which is Adapting to the Reimagined Workplace, if anybody's looking.
Okay.
It's Adapting to the Reimagined Workplace, Human Capital Responses to COVID-19.
Wow.
But as you said, there's a lot up in the air right now, and we did our survey at the end of September. We published it by the end of October. So this data is 6 weeks old, and as we know, with the pandemic, things are constantly changing with the recent surge that we've had. But when we did the survey at the end of September, we found that most organizations were planning for a return to the workplace by March of 2021.
Wow.
But there's a lot of uncertainty, and obviously those dates change as the forecasted increases in COVID-19 materialize. So I'm not sure that there will be 40% of the organizations back in the workplace by March 2021. But we did look at different size organizations, different organizations in different industries. We also looked at the makeup of the workforce. So we didn't look at, in our analysis, we didn't look specifically by industry, partially because of sample size. We wanted to always, as academic survey researchers, we have to be very careful to make sure our sample sizes are large enough to compare. But we did look at the makeup of the workforce, and we asked the organizations that responded to our surveys, these HR leaders, we asked if their organization was comprised of mostly professional and office workers, and that was 63% of our respondents. If it was mostly industry and manual services workers, that was 31% of our respondents, or if it was an equal share of industry and professional workers, and that was only 6%. So we do have some analysis that's specific to those different workforces.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, what about employees feeling as if they're stakeholders in that decision making? How do employees or workers feel about this when those decisions are made for people to return back to the office, or at least workers who are in the types of roles where they can sufficiently do their job, or they can be productive working at home or working remotely?
So that's a really great question, and one that we were curious about. So the end of August, we knew that a lot of organizations were planning to go back to the workplace by Labor Day. And so we ran a very short 3-question survey, believe it or not. We called it a rapid response survey. We had over 1,100 executives from all different industries respond. And we asked them about their safeguarding measures that they were taking.
Yeah.
So that information is available on our website. We have the press release that's there. But when we asked them how many of them had actually surveyed their employees about their readiness and comfort levels in returning to the workplace, only 59% of those 1,100 respondent organizations said that they had actually spoken to their employees. So 59% might sound like a big number, but that's 41% of the employees who had no say. So turned around and we did another rapid response survey. That one was only 4 questions. We did that in the beginning of September. And we found out that that the employees really do feel that there's different things that they have a say about.
Okay.
So we asked them. 29% of them said that they were concerned about a lack of adherence to the safety guidelines by their colleagues. 33% of them were thinking that productivity remained high while working remotely and questioned the wisdom of returning. But worse of all of this is that 12% of the survey respondents said they were feeling pressure to return to the workplace in order to keep their jobs. And that concern was 5 times higher for individual contributors and managers than for those executives at the C-suite level. So I think employees are very concerned. Their number one concern about returning to the workplace, and their number 2 concern is the risk of contracting COVID-19 personally or exposing their family members to it. And so there's a lot of concerns by employees about returning to the workplace.
That's interesting. The employee concerns that you just cited, you were just saying like a minute ago. I find that striking. Double the percentage of concern expressed by C-suite, like managers, executives.
4 times.
4 times. Wow.
Actually, no, it's actually, I said 5 times. I'm sorry, I got the math
5
wrong.
times. That's
The individual contributors and managers were 5%, and the executives at the C-suite level were 4%.
Wow.
Concerned about returning to their jobs. Yeah.
Concerned about, so definitely there's some like worry or concerns there. So I mean that creates like tensions within an organization, tensions within that space of that industry. And so do we wonder, because I know you follow human resource trends, you look at the human resource HR landscape, can those tensions become like unmanageable after a while? I mean that's hard when you have that level of tension on something as grave, something as dangerous as coronavirus or coronavirus infection inside a tight workspace. Do we wonder about that? I mean, what's the future of HR look like, right? I mean, when you have those kinds of intra-organizational, intra-company tensions happening or going on or flaring up?
Yeah, so one of the things that employees said they were concerned about, 29% said they were concerned that their colleagues wouldn't adhere to the safety guidelines. And, when you ask about the wider trend, we actually think that that's because the response to COVID-19 has been so politicized, and we're very fractured. We're not just fractured in the workplace, though. We're fractured in families. We're fractured with neighbors, and just walking down the street, you can see different levels of adherence to safety guidelines. If masks have been if people are wearing masks or not. So I think that it could create really big issues in the workplace when in fact the majority of employees have returned to the workplace. There's also concerns about a vaccine because what are employers going to do when a vaccine is available? I think a recent survey said over 50% of Americans said they wouldn't take a vaccine.
Yeah.
So, what do you do with that? Does an organization then say, well, if you won't take a vaccine, then you can't work for us if you don't have the ability to work from home? So I do see that we're going to have some long-term issues here. And also just the one that you mentioned at the outset around more remote workers. One of the lasting legacies of COVID-19 will be more remote workers in those organizations where that's possible. And so, I actually talked to a member yesterday of the conference board, and they said that they're going to require all of their administrative staff to work remotely going forward permanently. It's not just a choice. And so, think about when you took a job, when you accept a job, you get to see, does it fit with your life? Does the commute work? And all of those things. And so now we're going to have real issues as organizations try to deal with this. We also found that many organizations are reducing their geographic footprint And so they're going to have less office space. And what office space there will be may only be available for hoteling. People may not have offices anymore. So
Yeah.
a lot of changes to come.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see that. We've been talking with Robin Erickson. This is fascinating research too, Robin. Really appreciate this. So we got to bring you back on occasionally to talk about these trends. Robin Erickson, principal researcher at the Conference Board. Go to conference-board.org for more there to look a little bit deeper into that research that she was just citing. We brought her on to talk about that survey. Some fascinating stuff. Just a few things I wasn't aware of. So, definitely more food for thought and kind of add some more layer to some conversations we're having here on Reality Check. Robin, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. I know you gotta head out. You have a busy schedule, so really appreciate your time this Wednesday midday. Thanks again.
You're very welcome, and I look forward to coming back. Thank you, Charles.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. Take care. All right. We're going to open up the phone lines until we head to next break. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900, 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. Interesting survey there, as Robin Erickson was saying. Just 59% of, well, at least according to this survey and according to the leadership of over 1,100 organizations that responded to the survey, 59% of those leaders saying that they've spoken to their employees about COVID-19 workplace return plans. 12% of employees, however, are saying that they're being pressured to return to the workplace to keep their jobs. They're being pressured. Just 5% or under half of that of the C-suite leaders are saying, the C-suite, that's the executive suite leaders, are saying the same. So I'd be curious, while we have like open phone lines right now, what you're going through, if anyone's out there, if you're working remotely, or if you're having concerns about having to return to the workplace. Obviously, we're talking about those very corporate organizations that require being on a screen all day, but then we got those other types of jobs, those other types of capacities, other types of industries where it's more front line and you have to be on site. Let me go to Constance out of Germantown, who's calling in for a reality check. Constance?
Hi, Charles.
How you doing?
You do excellent work, and you so appreciate. You're one of my favorites. But Charles, I'm listening to your program regarding the teachers and calls about how awful they are. A personal experience with my granddaughter who has a master's in counseling psychology. Mm-hmm. And when she finished college, the kids, she was so devastated. She went to the 3 different schools. She's doing therapy. And she said to me one day, she was in tears. She said, yeah, I can't do this. She said, the kids, you say good morning, they say F-U-B. And she said, we were informed the other day that if they throw a chair, just let them. She said, I have an injury to my legs already. And I agree with you 100% because I was a grandmother that was on the case all the time. Nothing was past me with my grandchildren. I was at the school because my daughter had a daycare, and I had to see clients, so it left me able to do more than she could in terms of actually going up to the school at any time. And I think that what you have to be careful because a teacher that's a good teacher. Now, for me, Veronica Jordan took 4 of my grandkids across the finish line. 2 have finished college. 1 is in college, has done very well. I'm not going to go into everything that they've done, which is good, and because I didn't call for all that. But you have to be careful because for me, it was one that had trouble counting when he started out. And looking back, he finished college and everything. We can't say the teachers, the gentleman that was saying how awful they are. My granddaughter took a $10,000 cut in salary because she couldn't do it anymore. You know, so she works with adopted, I forget, and she said the difference is, she said, they call for our service. We're not forced to do the service and be, treated and hit and cursed. I mean, she was actually shaking one day. She said, I can't do this. $10,000 cut in salary. So, I mean, until you walk in shoes, you got to be very careful. I agree with you, Charles, and I agree about the parenting 100%. But I hear stories like this all the time about the children that you can't teach because the things they say to you, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's really nothing you can do about it. That's all I wanted to say, Charles, because it's a personal thing that my granddaughter went through, and it caused her to take a $10,000 cut in salary with her graduate degree.
Wow. Yeah. No. Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, that's why I keep saying it's got to be a complete. There's got to be more completeness.
It does.
And collaboration. It has to be. I mean, there's obviously there's failure that's happening at all the different levels, right? So and there are teachers are under enormous stress. Teachers, I have family members who are teachers, and they tell me all the time about like the stressors and the violence and the dangers, like the really alarming climate that they have to deal with in the classroom. I mean, I've had some teachers telling me that they kind of like are a little relieved that they don't have to be in a classroom environment right now with some of these students, with some of these children. Like a lot of the children are just off the chain, and we have to be honest about that. And so obviously, so that goes back. So, but then there are some teachers where where they have an opportunity, or they're in better control of that classroom, and or what are they falling short on? But then when you share experiences like what your granddaughter went through, it's like, well, like that's when you start having a conversation about like, well, what's going on in those households to create a situation where children are coming to school like that, are coming to school in those dispositions, what's happening in those households, what's happening in those neighborhoods. I mean, I remember going to Philly public schools, and and at that time, this is decades ago, and there were issues. There were issues inside the classroom. There were disruptive children in the classroom. It obviously depended on the teacher, and teachers back then had a little bit more latitude to use that yardstick. Maybe they need that. I don't know, but anyway, I'm just saying these. So I mean, I remember some Philly public school teachers. They would control their classroom, but then obviously you couldn't use corporal punishment anymore after a while. But I just remember Philadelphia public school students, walking on the way to school, and their breakfast that morning was chips at the local corner store, at the local Stop and Go. Well, that's obviously not a nutritious breakfast, and that's going to have impact on a child's mood, on a child's ability to comprehend or analyze specific lessons, or to be able to, they're not fueled up like they need to be able to go into a classroom and to carry on an 8 to 10 hour day. Much less extracurricular activities if there's like recess or sports or anything else involved where it gets a little physical. So already that's a problem right there. If like kids are going to school each day and all they're fueled up on is soda, now-and-laters, and chips and Lay's chips, like that's so you already have those issues. All of those are contributing factors, and so, but then we have to kind of think about like, well, what are the parents in those households going through? What are the support systems for those parents? And Philly's a very distressed city, and many parents are low income and they're struggling. And it's a lot to keep up with their children, and I understand that. So, but something's got to be done. People are going to have to make a lot more. And I know someone was saying here on Facebook Live, they were saying, are you kidding me saying no one talks education other than Woody? I'm just saying that, like, and I know there are other programs. She was mentioning Brother Shamari's program where he always speaks about education. I'm just saying in general, I'm not talking about WURD, but I'm talking about in general in the city of Philadelphia. I might be talking about it. Woody might be talking about it. Brother Shamari might be talking about it, and a few others like Horace. I don't get the sense that there is a level of urgency with respect to this issue of illiteracy in the city of Philadelphia. If we can tackle and this is a problem that has to be solved. It's not a problem where we have to reduce the number of people who are illiterate in Philadelphia. We have to eliminate, we have to go complete 100% reading proficiency. That has to be the target. That has to be the goal. It can't be, let's see if we can get, let's see if we can go raise it to 50% within the next 5 years. No. This has to be taken care of immediately, because it's creating situations like what Constance just shared, where her granddaughter had to go through as a teacher. She really wanted to get into that profession, and then she left it because that's because it's all building up, and it's building up into an unsustainable situation. from what I'm saying, from my vantage point, Philadelphia as a community, as a village, is not making any noise or adding any layer of urgency to this problem at all. I'm not seeing it in City Hall. I don't see it happening as far as like community groups, civic organizations, the communities themselves. You know, obviously it's like people aren't storming the school district offices and the school board to say, hey, like, can you get how do we figure out how do we tackle this issue of the majority of our children in the city of Philadelphia not being able to read? I don't see it. And I know a lot of other people aren't seeing it too, because if they did see it, you wouldn't have so many people paying attention to this conversation today. You wouldn't have people like Woody calling in every day talking about the illiteracy crisis. And you wouldn't have other people like Brother Shamari and Horace and others who are talking about it on a regular basis if we saw it, if it wasn't a problem. But apparently it is. And apparently us having this conversation today has struck a chord, which I'm happy that it has, because that's what we need. We need something. We need some kind of movement on that. It is just wrong, and it is downright evil and racist of the city of Philadelphia to allow this to continue to go on. Let me take a break because I think I went, I went a little bit over time. I have to take a quick break, and then when we come back on the other side, we're going to talk about the results of the election, also issues over voter suppression, and some of the legal battles that have taken place over what's been happening with Pennsylvania's vote and Pennsylvania voters. But anyway, let me take a quick break. Let me cool down a little bit because I'm a little frustrated on this issue, as are many others who are listening in and people who are talking about it too. Let me take a break and we'll be right back here on 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Man, this coronavirus has us all moving differently.
No doubt. Like washing our hands more and social distancing with the crew. I'm always telling people to give me 6 feet. We're here, Grandmom.
There's my babies. Good to see you got your mask on.
Wear mask. Stop the spread. For more information, visit www.pa.gov/COVID.
Paid for with Pennsylvania taxpayer dollars.
He's back.
This is Reverend Al Sharpton.
Keeping it real with the Reverend Al Sharpton.
In times like these, we have to stay connected.
At a brand new time.
Monday through Thursday, 9 p.m. till midnight. I'm excited that Keeping It Real returns to WURD.
Keeping it real
with the Reverend Al Sharpton.
Monday through Thursday, 9 p.m. till midnight.
This program is pre-recorded.
No phone calls, please.
Keep it locked to WURD 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com.
The WURD Radio newsletter, keeping you informed, engaged, and connected. Sign up by visiting WURDradio.com. Scroll to the bottom of the page and type your email address under Connect with Us. You'll receive the latest information on WURD Radio, messages from our president and CEO, Sarah Lomax Reese, exclusive articles and multimedia content, and resources. Stay informed with the WURD Radio newsletter. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
Yeah, welcome back to Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Adav Noti is Senior Director for Trial Litigation and also Chief of Staff for the Campaign Legal Center, joining us now to talk about the National Task Force on Election Crises. They are actually scheduled to, in about 45 minutes, hold a briefing which will answer some questions, offer some reflections, give some perspective on how the presidential election was conducted, and also the certification process of that presidential election was conducted here in Pennsylvania, and what that means. Adav joins us here on Reality Check today by phone. Adav, how are you doing?
No, I'm good. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate this. We've had one of your other colleagues from the National Task Force on before talking about what you all do and the role that you play. So you've already kind of graded, or you're still in the process of grading and assessing how the 2020 election was officiated in Pennsylvania, looking at multiple counties. How have you gone about that? What's that grading and assessment process look like?
Well, I think it's mostly a function of looking at what sort of obstacles were raised going into the election and on election day, and how they affected turnout or affected people's ability to cast votes by mail if that's what they chose to do. And the indications are pretty good, all things considered. I mean, there were some concerning developments and some ways in which the laws were not set up to be particularly voter friendly in Pennsylvania. But the rates of rejected ballots and the rates of people who tried to cast votes, particularly by mail, and were unable to do that, were significantly lower than in the prior election. So that was a very good sign, because that had been a real source of worry going into the election.
Got it. You know, I'm real curious about this. Maybe you can help me out with this, because I was confused about it, and I kind of reached out to a few folks to offer some clarification. I haven't gotten much, so maybe you can help me with it. The rejected ballots, there were in Pennsylvania, had about a week ago, we had a situation where there were thousands of rejected ballots throughout the state, or potentially rejected ballots throughout the state of Pennsylvania, mail ballots that people had submitted, right? And they needed their identification or their ID verified. And I thought that, so that there was this big mad rush. I think there was 1,100 ballots in Philadelphia alone, where the city commissioner's office and other elected officials made this really hurried announcement, telling Philadelphia residents, hey, if you're one of these 1,100 people that has this ballot, this troubled ballot, we need you to verify that this is you. That sounded like voter ID to me, and I thought voter ID was not a thing in Pennsylvania. That was something that was eliminated. I mean, I know that was a feature at one point a while ago in Pennsylvania, but then there were some legal battles over that, and then, to my understanding, voter ID no longer exists in Pennsylvania. But just last week, it sounded like voter ID does exist. Can I get some clarification on that?
Sure. So there's a very limited requirement in federal law for identification, and it only applies to a small number of voters who register for the first time and do it remotely. So basically, folks who register for the first time, do it online or by mail. Those folks are required to essentially verify their registration the first time they vote, and only the first time they vote.
Okay.
Was
that the case with this particular batch of rejected ballots in PA?
I believe so. I mean, but it was it's actually not a bad story all around, because there had been prior elections where if folks failed to do that, their ballots just would have been tossed. Right? They wouldn't have been counted at all. One of the positive developments in 2020 was that states, including Pennsylvania, made real efforts to contact folks who had these issues and let them fix the problem so that votes could be counted.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's interesting, because it's. I know there was some confusion about that and thank you for clarifying that. That makes sense. As far as the certification process, we've got Electoral College certification coming up on December 14th. There's some some remote worries about that, about whether or not that I suspect that will happen. I just want to get your thought on that. What's the next stage of this? Because the president obviously hasn't conceded, but that's more custom and tradition. He doesn't have to concede if he doesn't want to by law. But in order for us to really hit the road, or to essentially make rubber meet road, and to have it official, to have President-elect Biden become the official president, we need certification from the Electoral College. What's the next step? And do you have any concerns or worries there about faithless electors?
Right. So there's a couple steps between sort of where we are now and that final, making it official in the Electoral College. The first step, which is the stage we're in now, is for each state to certify its own results, and that's going relatively smoothly around the country, despite the Trump campaign's concerted efforts to disrupt it. Pennsylvania is on track to certify on time, and it looks like that's all going fine. The deadline for that, as you mentioned, is essentially December 14th. So there's lots of time left, because on December 14th, that's when the Electoral College, the actual people who cast the legal votes for President of the United States, that's when they cast those votes. So as long as each state has certified its results by December 14th, then the Electoral College voters will meet on that day and cast their votes. And basically, they each meet in their own state capitals. They don't all get together. Each state meets separately, and they cast their votes, and they mail them to Congress. And then Congress meets on January 6th of next year and counts the votes, and that's the end of it.
We're talking, if you're just now tuning in, we're talking with Adav Noti. He is Senior Director for Trial Litigation and Chief of Staff at the Campaign Legal Center, also a part of the National Task Force on Election Crises. And they're holding a briefing a little bit later on. He's preparing for a briefing a little bit later on. Give us a little bit of his time this Wednesday afternoon to talk about what's been transpiring, unfolding in Pennsylvania as far as election processes, the getting prepared for the Electoral College certification on December 14th. And did we find any partisan bias? A lot of people, I think, don't understand, and I'm sure you know this, Adav, that most folks out there don't understand that we don't have like one kind of uniform federal election process or set of election procedures, right? It's like thousands of different counties or county level elections administrators, and they're also following guidance from their secretaries of state. And that's those roles are filled by partisans, right? And so did we find, we had a conversation last week with an expert who was looking at, maybe potential partisan bias in election administration. Is that something that you all worry about? Like we saw this drama in Detroit and Wayne County that was unfolding last night, where the county election board was, you had 2 Republicans, you had 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans on the board. Were like, we don't want to certify these. We have concerns about these ballots coming out of Detroit from majority black Detroit. And they almost didn't certify those Wayne County ballots. Do we have or are you worried about that? Or are you worried about in the early voting and on voting day, maybe ballots being lost because of partisan bias in elections administration?
Yeah, it's a concern. The United States is pretty much unique among developed countries in having election administrators be partisan offices, and it's not ideal for sort of all the obvious reasons. That said, the history in most jurisdictions is that even though they're frequently partisan officials, most election administrators do a really fair, even-handed job of administering their elections, and rarely engage in sort of partisan politics around the administration of the election itself. There have been exceptions to that. I think what happened yesterday in Wayne County, Michigan, before it was reversed, was sort of in some ways a worst-case scenario, right, where partisan concerns actually cause an election administrator to take an illegal action. Now, if they had stuck by their refusal to certify the Detroit results, I think a court would have overturned them very, very quickly. But that is the exception, and you have counterexamples. For example, right now in Georgia, where the Republican Secretary of State, who's the chief election administrator in Georgia, and who is very conservative. This is not a moderate Republican, very conservative Republican. Has really stuck by his guns admirably and said, no, the president lost Georgia, and despite the calls from other partisan officials for him to somehow try to manipulate those results, he's said, I'm not going to do that. That would be illegal and improper. And I think that's the more common way that even partisan officials administer elections. They generally try to do the right thing.
Got it. What do you think is the kind of future elections administration after this 2020 election, what are some of the changes that you envision on the horizon down the line as far as how these elections are carried out? Any hope where we could make things a lot more uniformed and also a lot less partisan in terms of, the folks who are in these positions?
Yeah, I think there were some good developments, and we'll probably be able to build on them going forward. So, one of the side effects of the pandemic is that millions and millions, tens of millions of people voted by mail for the first time this year in states where that hadn't really been a viable option before. And by all accounts, that was wildly successful. People really liked it, and turnout was astronomical. And I think a lot of the states that were experimenting with that this year because of the pandemic will take steps to make it part of their regular election procedures. And in doing that, because the process for rolling it out in states where it hadn't been very prevalent before was sort of rushed and not always done in the best way, states now have an opportunity to look back at what went well and what didn't and fix it. For example, in Pennsylvania, there was an enormous problem that continues to still play out, which is that the state had an old rule that mail ballots that counties couldn't start processing them until Election Day. And if there's only a few of them, that's fine. But if there's millions of them, it creates a terrible backlog, and it takes a long time to process mail ballots and make sure they're valid and count them. Most states changed their rules to allow that processing to start before Election Day, so that the results weren't delayed. But Pennsylvania didn't, and it caused this situation where the initial results, which only reflected in-person votes, skewed one way, and then as more votes were counted, it became clear who the actual winner was. So I think that's an example of something that I think Pennsylvania will fix going forward. Some of the legislators in the state have already said they're going to fix that going forward, and I think there'll be other refinements to the process now that we're not in an immediate sort of crisis situation.
And Adav, I'm real curious. What's your total sort of overall assessment on the path of litigation right now? All these various federal lawsuits, these legal actions that the Trump campaign and Republicans have taken, trying to question or reverse the legitimacy of this election. Where is this all headed, you think?
Well, so far the litigation that's been filed is very, very weak. I mean, there have been probably almost 30 lawsuits filed all around the country. Some of them have been dismissed outright. The ones that have gotten to any sort of court hearing so far none of them has made it past an initial court hearing. There are some still lingering out there, including 2 in Pennsylvania, but they affect very small numbers of votes, not nearly enough to affect the results. So, given that we're already 15 days out from the election, and recount, all these states, even the ones that are doing recounts, the margin is far too large to change from recount. And the litigation is failing all across the country. I don't really think there's anything at this point that's going to significantly derail the process. There might be a couple more bumps in the road, like we had in Detroit yesterday, but in the end, I think they'll be fairly minor, and the courts aren't going to get involved.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. We've been talking with Adav Noti. He is Senior Director for Trial Litigation and Chief of Staff at the Campaign Legal Center, also part of the National Task Force on Election Crisis. That is electiontaskforce.org to learn more about them and to get some more information on that briefing that they're holding in about another 30 minutes or so. And Adav gave us a little bit of his time before that briefing. Adav, really appreciate your time this afternoon, so please keep in touch and keep us posted on how everything's unfolding.
Thanks for having me.
All right, take care. Okay, let's take a break, and we'll take open phone lines at 215-634-8065, toll-free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Let's take a break, and we'll be right back.
What's up, Philly? It's Solomon Jones. The school year is underway, but never before has that experience come in so many shapes and sizes. Is the education of your child being left to a smattering of clumsy, in-person, and virtual instruction? The COVID-19 crisis has created a market for untested virtual teaching models lacking true credibility. Maybe it's time to reconsider and check out Commonwealth Charter Academy. Here are the benefits to your family. 1. An online education provided at no cost to you, complete with laptop, headset, and help with internet access. 2. Partnership with the market leader in cyber education with a nearly 20-year track record of world-class learning. 3. Delivery of a safe, reliable, and comfortable education experience over the internet directly to the confines of your living room. Visit ccaeducate.me today and discover the gold standard of cyber education. That's ccaeducate.me.
Hey, WURD family. Our friends at Amoroso's Baking Company are hiring right now. Amoroso's has been baking the delicious bread in our community for over 100 years, and they want you to join their team today. The old and the young love Amoroso's, and they are hiring right now. Check it out. They offer fair pay and provide health, dental, and prescription plans after 90 days employment. Call 856-754-0355 or visit amorososbaking.com for details.
Monday through Thursday, keep it locked to WURD Radio. At 6 a.m., start your day with the Power Hour, hosted by Bishop Dwayne Royster and Reverend Mark Kelly Tyler. At 7, it's Wake Up with WURD with Solomon Jones. At 10 a.m., it's Reality Check with Charles Ellison. Then at 1 p.m., it's The Source, hosted by Andrea Lawful Sanders on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, and the Black Women's Leadership Council on Wednesdays. At 4 p.m., it's Evening Words with Nick Taliaferro. Then at 7, it's Save Space with Sincerely Sarita. At 9 p.m., round up your day with Keeping It Real with the Reverend Al Sharpton. Keep your dial locked to WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Streaming live on WURDRadio.com and the WURD Radio app. Or watch live on WURD TV via Facebook and YouTube. WURD Radio. Independent Black Media. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDRadio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDRadio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. Cliff out of Connecticut is calling in for a Reality Check. Cliff, what's good?
And Brother Charles, excellent guest and excellent subject matter, you know, with the Electoral College and the electors. And again, going back to the discussion you and I had, that there's nothing, according to the Constitution, there's nothing illegal for an elector not to vote the winner of the popular vote in the state of Pennsylvania or any other state. So Trump can get in, you know, through these electors when they vote in December. There's no, other than a oath and pretty much some pledge, you know, these electors don't have to vote for Biden. You know, and so when that happens, now, what would the black leadership and the black community do? Because it would be official, because under the Constitution, that's the process. So the damage will already be done because Trump would be back into office, and then you have to fight legislation and fight these representatives again to change or to amend the Constitution as it goes to the electoral college.
Yeah, you know, and I just don't, I mean, yeah, that's... It's a technical possibility. I just don't, in this particular, and for a variety of reasons, and we just don't have enough time to go into them right now. I just don't think that that's going to take place. I don't think that that's going to happen. I think that they understand, those electors, even those electors who were inclined to vote for President Trump, they understand like the very grave risk of that, particularly in a moment like this. And right now, Republicans right now, Cliff, are playing a very masterful game of have it all ways. You know, so they're like, on one hand, they're saying, oh, we're going to, quote, humor Trump, you know, because, you know, and just make it seem like, you know, he doesn't need to concede that he won, while at the same time, they're also openly acknowledging that Biden is president-elect. They just did that yesterday on the Senate floor because they understand that Trump is going to be around for a while, and so he's going to be the party standard bearer. They don't want to They don't want to feel the wrath of his base. So they're going to try to have it both ways. And they also understand that there's a lot of potential benefit, political benefit to them, especially heading into 2022, having Biden as president than having Trump as president. They just see that benefit there. And I think that the Republican Party as a whole, everybody in the Republican Party has had that conversation and they've had that understanding. Democrats have not yet had a unified conversation about getting geared up for 2022. As it stands, Democrats are just letting themselves getting ready to lose 2022. You know, and so they're not giving Biden the kind of unified backup that he needs to be successful in these first couple of years. Oh, go ahead, finish up, Cliff.
Yeah, so I end with this. So I want to end with this. So what's your percentage of him actually, based on the popular vote, that he becomes the president? So 90%, 99% that he's going to be the next president? A little less than
Who's that? Who?
Biden being officially the president.
Biden has said he's pretty much indicated he's just doing one term.
I'm saying this is actually happening. What's your opinion?
My opinion is I think that I think that, you know, get prepared to for a run from Kamala Harris. I think the stage is being set for Kamala Harris to run in 2024, but there are going to be a lot of other Democrats who are going to view themselves as viable as her. I don't think Biden's going to do this again.
This will be our next president.
Who?
100%. This will be our next president, Biden. It's official.
Oh yeah. Biden's is official in 2021. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's going to happen. I think we're going to have some bumps, as a lawyer just said just a minute ago.
I'll hang up.
There's going to be some bumps in the road, but this thing's going to get certified on December 14th. And thanks, Cliff. And they're already having conversations in D.C. and Washington D.C. on Capitol Hill. I mean, I'm being told by folks they're having like quiet conversations with the Secret Service about like what's the playbook for escorting Trump out of the White House if he becomes a bit defiant. How do we state? How does that? And all of this is him staging it. I mean, you heard the lawyer just now. I mean, there's like 30 active lawsuits. None of them have gotten past their initial court hearing. This is all kabuki theater at this point. And you know, people need not worry too much about that. People do, however, need to start getting themselves in order to see, okay, well, what are our agenda priorities for this new administration? How do we plan for that? What's the advocacy strategy around that to make sure that our policy proposals and ideas and demands and priorities are pushed by this new administration? And frankly, people need to understand that the only way to get those demands or those priorities pushed forward is for Democrats to not just maintain their majority in the House, but expand their majority in the House and to retake the Senate, because they didn't retake the Senate. People have got to go through civics lessons here. Presidents cannot do anything without the backup from the Congress, and in a highly polarized, hyper-partisan environment like this, a president like Biden is going to need a Democratic House and a Democratic Senate for him to pass the kinds of things that people are asking for, that people are demanding. Right? So let me go to Yusuf out of Oak Lane, who's calling for a reality check. Yusuf?
Yes.
What's
just wanted to, 2 points real quick, Mr. Ellison. You had about 3 guests on the day that touched on the climate and the pandemic. I think it was like 3, maybe 2. And, you know, you're the only one that stays on this climate and this pandemic because there's a link between global warming and this virus. People don't understand that. And you touched on the violence, you know, the upsurge of murders and aggravated assault. And that also is connected with it. The way that people are in an environment where one day is this and the next day is that. Now, on November the 10th, I called in and I was telling about how the temperature broke the record for the month of November when it reached 76 degrees and it was humid at night. Well, tonight it's going down to 20-something degrees. This is unusual for November. This up and down stuff, this happens in April when winter and summer are fighting each other. Winter is fighting to leave, and summer's fighting to come in. So April, that's why they call it April Fool's Month, because one day it can be 70 and the next day it can be 40. November is supposed to be settled. It's the second month of fall. The weather's supposed to be settled. It's supposed to average just about the same degrees every day, not be 76 degrees and humid on the 10th, and then on the 18th or 19th, down in the 20s and only in the 30s on the daytime. and you stand on this because these government officials are stubborn. They're like, they won't get this through their head that you got to start doing something about this global warming. And you keep going right about playing football and basketball and all this old nonsense. No, start worrying about this climate, or you won't be able to play football and basketball.
No, you won't.
Thank you.
No, you won't. Yeah, Yusuf is like speaking truth on that. And yeah, everyone's they're gonna have to prioritize that too. The real alarming state that we're in as far as the environment. A lot of problems to deal with, a lot of problems to tackle. I know illiteracy was high among them today, and it's going to have to be like that other days too here on Reality Check. But Yusuf also snapping us back into reality and making us or putting out the word on the climate. We need to respond immediately and urgently to that as well. Let me wrap this Wednesday midday edition of Reality Check. We're headed into the source with the Black Women's Leadership Council coming up next. It's coming up next here on WURD. I'm Charles Ellison. You can go to twitter.com @Ellison Report. Also the B Note, THEBENote.com. Cliff out of Connecticut, go to thebnote.com. That's our companion magazine for this program. There is a piece that just came out about a couple of days ago. Will the Electoral College choose Trump? It's a nice piece by one of our contributors, David Seaton. That's at the B Note, THEBENote.com. For more there, kind of gives you a nice summary, some thoughts as to what might happen on December 14th. Anyway, thank Troy Wilmore on the board. Still is keeping those radio trains running on time. I appreciate him. You should appreciate him as well. And everyone, thanks for tuning in and watching us on WURD TV too. I didn't get to some of those comments. There's a lot of robust conversation happening on WURD TV on our Facebook live stream. So we'll try to get to that. We have City Council Live tomorrow. So do stay tuned in. Every Thursday is City Council Live. So Philadelphia City Council Live is on tap. So in the meantime, stay sharp, stay smart, and always stay safe out there. So God willing, I will see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. sharp. Everyone have a great afternoon, a good evening. Take care.